Chapter 100. Demon Muscle Man Evan Bourne was one of the more famous sea-level fighters in the Sai River Original Arena. He was said to have worked as a professional wrestler in Brazil before, but he was expelled from professional wrestling because of his misdeeds in the arena. He traveled to many countries and finally came to this underground arena to make a living. In the last battle, this devilish muscle man had successfully broken the leg of the underground boxer, cruelly obtaining the final victory. Although he had just finished a game, Evan Bourne signed up immediately when he heard that there was a new promotion match. After all, in the promotion match, if the contestant on the receiving side won, he would get double the prize money, which was a full 20 million. As long as I can get rid of this kid, I can get 20 million. It's really worth it. Plus the bonus I saved before, as long as I win this game, I can go back to my hometown and get married. Seeing Ryuto's figure gradually walking toward the ring, Evan Bourne's eyes flashed with a hint of joy. He seemed to see the leisurely life of his wife and children. After all, no matter how loud the audience cheered for Ryuto, no matter how big the background introduced by the host was, today's Ryuto looked at most like a handsome blonde high school student from the outside. Such a blonde punk could scare ordinary people, but in the underground world, no matter how much he boasted, he couldn't be related to the word powerhouse at all. The height and body shape of 16 years old completely reflected the unique thin feeling of a teenager. Especially when he stood with the tall Evan Bourne, the comparison between the two sides was more like an adult beating a child. It was completely bullying. He's just a teenage bean sprout, and he dares to come up to the competition. This 20 million is really easy to earn. At this moment, the other players watching the game in the lounge couldn't help but complain. They seemed to regret that they signed up late. Rumble. When the host quickly left the arena, the iron cage that was originally hanging above slowly fell down. Evan Bourne's face had a greedy smile, and at the same time, he was already imagining his victory in his mind. Alright, what kind of pose should I make after I win? Do push-ups on this bean sprout's head? Or perhaps he would grab him by the ankle and raise him up to dry him in the sun. Before the countdown began, in addition to Evan Bourne, the audience sitting around the round tables had already used the betting machines in their hands to silently express their support for this demon muscle man. Furamaki Sotaro, who was sitting at the table, looked at the monitor and said, 182 to 117. It seems like I've been underestimated. Yun Yen also looked up at the monitor that showed 182, 117 and asked in confusion, Master Furamaki, what does that mean? It's the betting odds for both sides. If you bet on Ryuto winning, it's 1-1. 82, and if you bet on the wrestler, it's 1-1. 17. This means that those who bet on the wrestler winning are more one-sided. How could that be? Don't tell me everyone is so pessimistic. Originally, Yun Yen wanted to say, don't tell me everyone is so pessimistic about Ryuto. But before she could finish speaking, she looked into the iron cage and saw Long Do and Ivan Burns standing opposite each other like an adult and a child. She instantly understood the thoughts of the people who had placed their bets. Indeed, even if Ryuto came with the title of Legendary Child, he was too young after all. Even Kirishima Kazuma, who was known as the Underground War God, was almost 30 years old when he became famous here. A man in his 30s was at the peak of his life in terms of physical ability, skills, experience, and other aspects. But a 16-year-old boy was still in the growth period, or even just at the beginning of the growth period. How could such a boy beat those experienced underground fighters? Therefore, although the surrounding audience was very excited about Ryuto's participation, there were very few people who really dared to bet on him winning. It could be said that he was a dark horse. Just when Yun Yen thought of this, the host who left the iron cage had already shouted with a microphone, "Countdown begins. 3, 2. Is it starting? Is he really going to fight with that strong man?" Looking at Ryuto in the iron cage with the devil muscle man, Yun Yen only felt that her heart was about to jump to her throat. 1. Match begins. No, I don't dare to look. Just as the host shouted, "Let the match begin," Yun Yen unconsciously closed her eyes and stretched out her hand to cover it tightly, as if she was afraid to see the scene of Ryuto being beaten to the ground. But before Yunyan could cover her eyes and finish the sentence, "Ryuto classmate, you must come down alive," in her heart, there was a burst of thunderous roars all around. At the same time, the atmosphere around the arena was burning to the extreme. Immediately after, the host who just announced the start of the match shouted in disbelief, "Match! The match is over. The winner of the first match is the legendary child, Ryuto Kiryu." What? After hearing the host's words, Yunyan trembled in fear and let go of her hand. Her eyes widened as she looked inside the huge iron cage. She saw the devil muscle man, Evan, who was ready to throw a heavy punch 2 seconds ago, had already fallen to the ground like a salted fish. His tiger eyes that were still glaring angrily were now rolled back, his chin was crooked at a strange angle, and there was a big shoe print on his face. It felt as if someone had given him a solid slap, causing his face to be crooked. One just like that. After realizing that the opponent had fallen to the ground, Yunyan looked at Ryuto, who was standing in the middle of the arena. At this time, Ryuto's face was not red and he was not out of breath. It was almost impossible to tell that he had just fought. Of course, from a certain point of view, it was indeed not a fight. At most, it was a one-sided beating. But in any case, this match ended too quickly and too suddenly. Although the audience did not expect the match to last for too long. But what everyone did not expect was that it was so fast that even the referee could not react in time. This earth-shattering match was later called the beginning of the legend. And according to the description of a spectator who was lucky enough to see the match with his own eyes, the situation at the time was roughly like this. How do I put it? In short, it was unexpected. Although Evan is not too strong, as a professional wrestler, his ability to take hits is undeniable. It is not easy to KO him. The moment the referee announced the start of the match, Evan directly pounced on the opponent and tried to use the lock technique to drag the battlefield to the ground. This way, he could use the absolute weight difference to completely suppress the opponent. Looking at the way he pounced, it was terrifying. If he was facing a normal sea-level fighter, he should be able to take him down smoothly. Unfortunately, the opponent that day was not of this level. The second that the burly body pounced, young Master Ryuto stepped to the side and his right fist hit Evanborn's chest like lightning. This punch seemed to be magical. After the punch landed, from our perspective, we could clearly see that Evan suddenly stopped. Although it was only a short second or so, it was enough. Young Master Long Do swung his left elbow and hit Ivanburn's chin at an extremely close distance. After Ivanburn lost his balance, young Master Long Do's left foot caught Ivanburn's heel and charged forward, knocking Ivanburn's entire body backwards and onto the ground. The back of the burly man's head hit the ground without any protection and made a loud bang. It was as if I could feel the vibration from the seat I was sitting in. I was worried that his brain matter would spurt out from his nose. Young Master Ryuto seemed to be worried about this, so he directly jumped up and used his full body weight to stomp on Evanborn's face. He helped Evan to step on the brain matter back. It was a joke, just to liven up the atmosphere. Of course, Evan was not seriously injured. He only stayed in the hospital for 3 years before he was released. The only small problem was that he suffered from a psychological illness of peeing his pants when he saw a high school student. At this point, the narration of the spectator who had watched the match ended here. This also showed how easy Ryuto's first victory was. Chapter 101. The winner of the first match is the legendary child, Ryuto Kiryu. Along with the referee's roar of disbelief, the first match ended as fast as lightning. According to the accurate statistics, the entire match only took 1.78 seconds. It was really like a flash of lightning. Is this real? I'm not dreaming, am I? Yunyan watched as the huge iron cage rose and Evan was carried away by a group of people to receive treatment. Her rosy lips couldn't help but slightly open, and her eyes were filled with astonishment. How is this possible? Such a strong and powerful wrestler was defeated by Ryuto just like that? Other than Yunyan, the rest of the audience were also shocked by this shocking scene, and constantly let out thunderous roars. What did I just see? That's too strong. As expected of the legendary child, it seems like he came prepared. Get those idiots over here right now. If there's a woman, throw her aside. If you don't watch such an interesting match, you'd be wasting your life. For a moment, Ryuto, who was standing in the middle of the field, became the focus of everyone, including Furamaki Sotaro, who was also staring at the youth. Good lord! Is he also a genius? That profound skill, Tiger Fall, just now was already quite familiar, as if he had practiced it for a few years. With Furamaki Sotaro's eyesight, he could clearly see the tit-for-tat confrontation in the ring. Ryuto first used insight to dodge the fatal grab, then his right fist accurately hit Evanborn's diaphragm, causing him to spasm for a moment. In that short second where time seemed to be frozen, the youth rapidly unleashed a series of vicious and smooth continuous attacks. Every move was aimed at the opponent's vital points, directly knocking the strong and durable wrestler unconscious on the spot. In order to achieve what he had done just now, other than having sufficient mastery of the profound meaning of skill, Tiger Fall, one also needed to have a strong body and mental fortitude. When enemies meet on a narrow path, the courageous will win. First courage, second strength, and third skill. Especially in this kind of cage battle where both sides had nowhere to retreat, the effect of courage was quite obvious. Would he be nervous when others made a move? Was there any burden when he took action? The key to all of this was the guts. The fact that Ryuto, at the age of 16, had the courage to fight without fear in a real battle greatly exceeded Furamaki Sotaro's expectations. Of course, what Furamaki Sotaro didn't know was that Ryuto had already changed his title to Extreme Young Master. After changing to this title, his courage had already reached the level of Level 4 International Warrior. It could be said that he was in a state where he was full of guts and was not afraid of anything even if the sky collapsed. However, although the first fighter had been carried off the field, the competition was not over yet. Not long after, the second fighter had already quickly walked towards the ring under the host's shout. Because this was a promotion match, Long Do had to defeat 3 opponents in a row, and there was no time to take a breather. Therefore, when the middle-aged man wearing a taekwondo uniform with a fierce face and the word "Fierce Tiger" printed in Korean on his back walked towards the ring, the audience suddenly became excited again. The host also took the opportunity to introduce in full swing, "Ladies and gentlemen." The second fighter in this promotion match was the Ferocious Tigers of Bangzi, who had already won 4 matches. Park In-young. Let us welcome him with a warm round of applause. In the cheers of the surrounding audience, Park In-young walked steadily into the cage ring that was being opened. While he was on the stage, the fighter had been looking straight ahead, as if he was not affected by the surrounding noise at all. When she saw the straight figure, Yoon Yen asked in confusion, "What's going on?" This fighter seems to give off a different feeling than the previous wrestlers. Sotaro next to her explained, "Because this guy belongs to the type of Dao Seeker, his aura is more serious, without the stench of money." Dao Seeker? What does that mean? Although most of the people who come to this underground fighting arena are here for money, there are also a small number of people who want to become stronger. These fighters who don't covet fame and fortune and only pursue strength are called Dao Seekers. So that's how it is, then Ryuto is also a Dao Seeker. Of course he is, as the successor of the Furamaki-style martial arts. How can he fight for money? That's too vulgar. In front of Yoon Yen, Furamaki straightened his back and said confidently, if he knew that Ryuto was counting money in his heart, who knows if he would vomit blood on the spot. However, even at this time, Furamaki was already quite optimistic about Ryuto. But when the man who was said to be a Special Forces fighting skills coach stood in front of Ryuto, the iron cage above slowly fell down. Furamaki still couldn't help but secretly break out in a cold sweat for his disciple. As far as he knew, although Pu Renyong was a C-rank fighter, Pu Renyong's skills were undoubtedly at the top of the C-rank group. Different from the Devil's Muscle Man Evanborn, who only had a strong physique but extremely rough skills, Park In-young had good attainments in skills and extremely rich combat experience. Before coming to the Sai River fighting arena, Park In-young had won 3 consecutive championships in the Korean national taekwondo competition and was one of the top masters in the surface world. After he mastered the kicking taekwondo to the point of perfection, because he couldn't find an opponent in the surface world, he transferred to the inner world to compete in underground fighting skills. Of course, the purpose of this man coming here to compete was purely to better train himself, not to get paid. Therefore, fighting with this type of fighter was much more difficult than fighting the Devil's Muscle Man. Countdown begins. 3, 2, 1. Match begins. Just as Furamaki Sotaro was thinking about the confrontation between Ryuto and Park In-young, the host had already announced the start of the match. Different from Evan Bourne, Park In-young didn't have any intention of underestimating Ryuto, but chose to go all out from the start. This young man's strength is not ordinary, but he is not my opponent. The moment the battle began, Park In-young's body crouched slightly, and his legs jumped forward as if they had hit a spring. He used a swift and fierce mid-air twisting side kick to kill his opponent. When this kick was out, Park In-young's waist and right leg twisted greatly with his hip joint as the axis, perfectly transmitting the strength to his foot, and accurately kicked Ryuto's neck. What a beautiful flying kick, especially from the perspective of a third party. It was as perfect as a textbook. Moreover, this kind of mid-air kick that accumulated the strength of the whole body and even added weight couldn't be blocked, it could only be dodged. This was basically the consensus of everyone present. After all, the strength of the leg was 3 times stronger than the hand, especially this kind of kick that a kicking master used all the strength in his body. The strength was enough to break an arm like a twig. However, in the next moment, Ryuto didn't care and stretched out his hand, blocking the side of his body with his forearm. What the hell? Is this guy crazy? Seeing Ryuto stretch out his arm to block Park In-young's kick, the audience wondered if some strange liquid had suddenly entered his brain. If it was a muscular man with arms thicker than his thighs blocking, it would be fine, but how could a teenager like you block it? Your arm is not even as thick as a baseball bat. Won't this kick break your bones? Bang! In the next moment, that fierce side kick directly swept Ryuto's left arm. At the same time, Ryuto's right fist also landed on Park In-young's crotch. Poochie! The moment the fist landed, everyone seemed to hear the sound of something breaking. Of course, it was definitely not the heart breaking, but the balls breaking. Chapter 102. What was the most unbearable pain in this world? Generally speaking, the medical field divided the pain that humans could endure into 12 levels. The highest level was the pain that women had to endure during childbirth. However, most men would silently shake their heads in disagreement with this conclusion, because in their opinion, there were more painful experiences than childbirth. And this kind of encounter was egg-crushing. At this moment, in this very arena, Park In-young was fortunate enough to experience the ultimate pain of a human, the pain of having one's balls crushed. For this taekwondo expert from South Korea, his psychological changes in an instant were quite complicated. When his right foot kicked Ryuto's arm as he wished, Park In-young was secretly delighted. This idiot actually used his arm to block my kick. Wouldn't that cripple his arm? But as the kick hit its target, and there was a clear feedback coming from there, Poo Ren-young felt that something wasn't right. What's going on? Why was his arm as hard as steel? Instead, it was my leg that was almost broken? Before Park In-young could feel the pain of his right leg hitting the target, the pain from the recoil hit his nerves. Long Do's fist had already landed on his crotch with all his strength without any hesitation. The moment his lower body was hit, Park In-young knew that he was done for. He could no longer fight. From the moment he was hit to the moment he felt the pain, there was a short period of time. It was like a period of time for humans to repent. In the blink of an eye, an indescribable pain spread from his lower body to Park In-young's brain. Pain. Pain. Ouch. Ouch. If it wasn't for the fact that he was afraid of being ridiculed, Park In-young's mind would have been filled with over 100 RS. However, this was not enough to describe the extreme pain he felt. Plop. Park In-young was punched and fell to the ground. He abruptly covered his crotch with both hands, and his sturdy body quickly twisted like a cooked shrimp. Because it was too painful, Park In-young opened his mouth and wanted to scream. However, because the pain was too intense, even if Park In-young opened his mouth, he could not scream because of the pain. He could only open and close his mouth like a fish out of water. It was over. Although Park In-young was still conscious, as long as he was a man, he would know that the match was over. His vitals had been hit, and it seemed to have been split open. No man would be able to continue fighting under such circumstances. Of course, from Ryuto's point of view, Park In-young was asking for trouble and seeking his own death. If you want to kick, then just kick. Why did you have to jump up? Moreover, this idiot jumped so high and still spread his legs so casually, as if he was afraid that others wouldn't be able to hit his vital parts. If Pu Ren-young really wanted to play like that, he would at least need to use some kind of secret technique like Golden Bell Shield, Iron Crotch, or something. However, Pu Ren-young didn't put any effort into this aspect, so he ended up with nothing. But this move of his was really strong. I almost couldn't block it. He then walked up and gave Park In-young a kick, knocking him out. Ryuto casually swung his left arm that he had used to block the kick. He felt that his arm was still somewhat numb and painful. From an ordinary person's point of view, Ryuto had used such a weak arm to block the kick that was filled with all his strength. The result would definitely be a cracking sound, and his bones would be broken as if he had been hit by a car. Unfortunately, Ryuto had Copper Skin Mastery and Iron Bone Mastery, these two pay-to-win passive skills, which provided him with strong resistance. Although the proficiency of these two skills was not enough for him to take all the damage, it was not a problem for him to withstand this kick. The match has ended. The winner of the second match is the legendary child, Ryuto Kiryu. Seeing that Park In-young had fainted, the host decisively signaled the end of the match. While announcing the end of the match, the host also secretly covered his lower body, as if he could empathize with Park In-young's experience. Looking closely, other than the host, the surrounding audience members who were all male, all of them simultaneously covered their lower body or clamped their legs together. This kind of collective action that happened at the same time was called the egg-shattering consensus phenomenon by the dragon fighters. The so-called egg-shattering symbology. It meant that when someone's balls were shattered, all the males who saw the scene or heard the sound could not help but react. They either clamped their legs together or covered their lower body with their hands, without exception. Of course, for a female audience member like Yun-yen, such a scene was more or less awkward. Seeing Park In-young being carried off like a salted fish, Yun-yen could not help but mumble, Is this considered a battle? In Yun-yen's mind, a battle should be a fist-to-fist fight, a passionate collision of body, technique, and soul, a competition where one's strongest side was displayed through sweat and blood. But Ryuto's fighting style just now, to be honest, was a little despicable. However, Furamaki Sotaro smiled and nodded. Battles have always been despicable. As long as you can win, anything is fine. Even if you attack there? What do you think? A real battle is like this. In the past, samurai fights sounded grand, but in reality, they would throw away their swords, bite each other's teeth, gouge each other's eyeballs, and dig out each other's balls. It's just that the later generations have beautified the profession of samurai. To put it bluntly, they are no different from hooligans. Bite each other's teeth, gouge each other's eyeballs? When she heard such impactful words, Yun-yen was stunned for a moment, as if she did not expect such a terrifying scene to exist in this world. But whether a fighter was despicable or not was not important to them. The most important thing was whether they walked off the stage standing or lay down on the ground. With the end of the second match, the third match was even more in line with Furamaki Sotaro's words. When Ryuto continued to kill his second opponent, the third match did not immediately begin. Under the arrangement of the host, some staff members walked onto the stage with some messy things and began to arrange things around the stage. What is the meaning of this? Why do they have to put things on the stage? Yun-yen looked at the staff members in confusion, as if she was somewhat puzzled by the sudden change. This is one of the special rules of the competition, the prop battle. Prop battle. Does it mean that we can use props? Well, the last match of every promotion match is always a special match. The prop battle means that there will be many props other than normal weapons placed on the stage to see who can make better use of these props. Looking at the props piled up on the stage, the old man showed a dignified expression. Chapter 103. After Furamaki Sotaro finished his explanation, the staff had already finished setting up the ring. At this time, the originally not-so-spacious ring was placed with benches, bicycles, KFC signboards, flower pots, railings, and other common street things. How to describe the feeling these small props gave people? It was a little subtle. Do you think these small props like benches are weapons? They definitely can't be considered weapons. Otherwise, if I carry a bench on the street, won't the police arrest me for carrying a weapon? But although benches and other small props are not weapons, they are still useful. However, whether or not they would be useful in a fight would depend on how the contestants used them. After the ring was set up for the last match, the opponent of the third prop battle slowly walked out of the contestant tunnel. Dong, dong, dong. Just as the huge figure walked out of the contestant tunnel step by step, the surrounding audience couldn't help but shout, "Wait! It's actually him! Wasn't this guy suspended for violating the rules and killing his opponent half a year ago? Probably the suspension time is up, otherwise he would have been a B-class fighter. This monster is not a C-class fighter. This is troublesome. I actually met this murderer in the prop battle. He is an expert in using props to execute people." Amidst the exclamations of the audience, the villain Mike, who came from across the sea and was wanted for committing multiple murders, walked into the ring while drooling. He was known as the Dirty Executioner. His 2-meter-tall fat body was wearing large overalls, exposing his fat and hairy upper body to the air. With such a figure, coupled with a smile brimming with happiness and a ferocious glint in his eyes, it made people feel as if they were looking at a wild boar in clothes. Hee hee, young people are good. I like to play with young people the most. I'll play for a long time before I die. Pfft. When Michael the villain saw Ryuto standing in the ring and looking at him coldly, he laughed like he had met his favorite toy. The old man below the stage couldn't help but frown and say, "Oh no, I actually met Michael the villain at this time." Michael the villain. This guy doesn't look like a good person at first glance. He gives off a disgusting feeling. It's not just disgusting, he was a felon in America before. After he was smuggled here and started to fight underground, he publicly tortured and killed his opponents. He's a scumbag who enjoys torturing and killing others. Although Furamaki Sotaro had not seen the Dirty Executioner in his previous matches, he had heard a little about what he had done. In that game, which was also a prop battle, the villain Mike forcibly stuffed a railing into his opponent's anus, nailed his hands to the bicycle, and rode around the field. The tragedy of a match, but actually a punishment, lasted for more than 10 minutes. When the entire ring was covered in blood and even the host couldn't stand it anymore and finally announced the end of the match, Michael the villain directly tore his opponent's throat. Therefore, there was no doubt that Michael the villain was a homicidal maniac, a lunatic who should be caught and hanged. However, this lunatic was now locked in the same cage as Ryuto, surrounded by a variety of execution props. Phew! It seemed that the third match wouldn't end so easily. As the iron cage that had just been lifted slowly fell, the surrounding escape routes were completely sealed. Ryuto looked at the execution props scattered around and couldn't help but sigh. Seeing that Ryuto seemed a little unhappy, the smile on Michael the villain's face became even more joyful. This brat actually made it to the third match, which means that he's quite capable. It's better to play it safe. Thinking of this, Michael the villain discreetly extended his right hand to his butt, and even reached into his pants to buckle a few times. On the surface, this glossy and sloppy murderer was normally buckling his butt, but in reality, when he extended his hand, there was a small skinning knife in his palm. The skinning knife was covered with a rubber hose and rope, so it went without saying where this thing came from. After secretly holding the sharp blade in the palm of his right hand, Michael the villain extended his left hand and pretended to be friendly. "Before the fight, how about we shake hands to show our friendliness? If you have the guts." Seeing Michael the villain's action, some of the audience who had seen him fight before couldn't help but say, "Here he goes again, this bastard is playing this trick again." Trick? What trick is he playing? He likes to provoke others to shake hands with him. After his left hand grasps the person, he immediately stabs the small props in his right hand. This trick has killed several newbies before. The audience's words faintly floated into Union's ears, and when she noticed it, she immediately shouted, "Wait! Ryuto classmate, don't. Sure, you can't give a hint to the players on the field, or you'll be asked to leave by the guards." But before Yunyen finished shouting, Sotaro quickly made a shushing gesture to her. At this time, the two guards who were about to walk over also tactfully returned to their original position. But even so, Yunyen still whispered to Sotaro, "If this is the case, Ryuto will suffer a big loss. That villain is obviously up to no good. Don't worry, he's not stupid. How can he be stupid enough to shake hands with others? Shake hands, right? Sure, I like shaking hands the most." But before Sotaro finished his words, Ryuto directly said to Michael the villain with a smile, as if he was slapping him in the face, "What the hell?" The moment they heard Ryuto's death-seeking declaration, Sotaro was stunned, Yunyen was also stunned, and everyone in the audience was stunned. No way. Does this guy really not see that Michael the villain is up to no good by shaking hands with him? Or does he really believe that he won't be tricked? He took the bait. As if he was afraid that this fool would go back on his word, Michael the villain quickly extended his left hand in front of Ryuto, and at the same time, he smiled and said, "Then hurry up, let's shake hands and then we can start." Huh? Zap. Before Michael the villain finished speaking, a rusty nail head appeared in the palm of his left hand. This nail looked at least 5 centimeters long, and the head was blunt. It was full of rust and the smell of oil. It seemed to be a gadget removed from the bicycle behind Ryuto. At the moment when Michael the villain stretched out his left hand, Ryuto, who had hidden the nail in his hand, directly made his move. He ruthlessly inserted the nail into the back of Michael the villain's hand. It was hard to imagine that such a blunt nail could penetrate the fan-sized arm so smoothly, and it penetrated the back of the hand and came out of the palm. This extremely ruthless scene suddenly stunned Michael the villain and all the audience. Chapter 104. Michael the villain was actually ruthless enough. He actually planned to grab the other person's hand with one hand, and then take the opportunity to sneak attack with a sharp weapon in the other hand. But who would have thought that Ryuto seemed to be even more ruthless than this guy, and he did it even more ruthlessly. He didn't even need to shake hands, and directly served with nails. Oh. Ah. The moment he reacted, Michael the villain held his left hand that was in severe pain and screamed. At the same time, dirty blood scattered around. Creak. Bang. At the same time, Ryuto didn't hesitate to pick up the stool on the side, and swung it toward the head of this big scum, making a dull sound. This hit directly smashed the stool into pieces, and it also exploded a bloody flower on Michael the villain's head. "Oh, your head is quite hard, and it's probably quite empty inside, right?" After smashing Michael the villain a few steps back and leaned on the edge of the iron cage to gasp for breath, Ryuto picked up a bicycle from the side. At least a dozen pounds of bicycle was carried in his hand, and then he even quickly swung it. It was hard to imagine that someone could use a bicycle as a weapon, and when he swung it, it felt like nunchaku? Swinging up and down, left and right, for a time, the huge body of the bicycle flew in front of Michael the villain's eyes, and he was dumbfounded. Of course, in addition to the villain Mike, the surrounding audience was also dumbfounded by what they saw. Suddenly, an audience couldn't help but say, "What? What is this guy doing? He can't be a professional acrobat, right?" That's right, it was really like acrobatics. From the previous blunt nail piercing through his hand, it could be seen that Ryuto's proficiency in using these small props was not inferior to a professional acrobat. But I'm afraid no one would have thought that the reason why Ryuto could use the props so smoothly was mainly because of the binding skill. The rogue doesn't die by bare hands. Smooth as silk. At this moment, no matter what tool it was, Ryuto was able to use it as smoothly as his own fingers. Even a large item like the bicycle was no exception. Stinking brat. Come on. Of course, Michael the villain would not just stand there and take the beating. He pulled out the skinning knife hidden in his right hand and charged towards Ryuto. This charge seemed reckless, but in fact, it was a little clever. After all, this big guy was standing sideways with his shoulder in front of him. Even if Ryuto smashed the bicycle over, it wouldn't hit any vital parts. However, If he could get close enough, he would definitely be able to take Ryuto's life with a single slash. Bang! In the next second, the bicycle smashed into Michael the villain's body, but it didn't cause much of a commotion. After all, his skin was rough and his flesh was thick. As long as it wasn't a vital part, being hit by something as light as the bicycle wouldn't hurt him at all. But at the same time, Ryuto let go of the large item in his hand and shot out from the side. In the blink of an eye, he arrived in front of Michael the villain's body. Seeing that the opponent was right in front of him, Michael the villain didn't hesitate to stab with his knife. But it was right in front of Ryuto's eyes. Profound skill. Tiger fall. The right fist that was filled with power heavily smashed into Michael the villain's abdomen. It directly caused his right hand that was wielding the knife to stiffen in mid-air. Although it was only for a short period of time, it was enough. In an instant, Ryuto jumped up. His right hand was like a blade piercing towards Michael the villain's heart. It wasn't difficult to injure this big guy, but it was extremely difficult to make him lose his ability to fight. After all, Michael the villain's body was as sturdy as a gorilla. Even if he had the rogue doesn't die by bare hands, it was quite troublesome to use the surrounding small items to kill this big guy with thick skin. Fortunately, Ryuto still had a final trump card that could be used in this situation. Equipment. The moment his right hand stabbed out, a dragon-tooth sawtooth army knife that was painted black popped out from his sleeve. He quickly grasped it and stabbed into Michael the villain's body. This dragon-tooth sawtooth army knife was an excellent item that could be used on the battlefield. Therefore, when Ryuto stabbed with all his strength, the power of this knife was enough to penetrate the thick layer of fat and muscle and directly reach the heart. This is... Therefore, in the next second, Michael the villain only felt a chill in his heart. A coldness that he had never felt before filled his body. I really want to kill him. Ah. Plop. The murderer who came from the other side of the ocean fell on the stage. Until the end, his eyes were wide open, as if he wanted to take Ryuto with him. It ended just like that. It can't be, right? When Michael the villain fell on the ground and blood seeped out from his chest, even the host-cum-referee couldn't react to what happened. Something's wrong with this? Ryuto clearly used his hand to hit. Why did it look like he was stabbed by a weapon? No, it didn't look like it. He actually used a weapon secretly, right? Looking at the young man who had a normal expression on the stage and the owner of the original battle arena of the River of Sai, who was quietly watching from the special VIP seats, the flower merchant couldn't help but frown. Although he didn't know how Ryuto did it, it was impossible to cause such a penetrating injury with just a hand. This was something that the flower merchant, who was used to watching combat competitions, was 100% sure of. Interesting, he actually used a weapon openly in the ring and was able to hide it from my eyes. It seems that while this kid inherited his father's bravery, his character is also more cunning and fierce. When the flower merchant was secretly observing Ryuto, the host finally announced, "The match is over. The winner of the third match is the legendary child Ryuto Kiryu. At the same time, congratulations to him for being promoted to a B-class fighter." As the referee announced the end of the match, the audience who watched the whole process of the promotion match couldn't help but shout loudly, "Whoa, whoa, whoa! So powerful! He actually won 3 matches in a row. Not only that, he looks very relaxed. I'm afraid he can fight 3 more matches. It should be said that he's worthy of being Boss Yima's bloodline. He's even fiercer than him in the past." Clap, 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 clap. When the iron cage slowly rose, Ryuto took a check from the host and walked down the stage. A tide of applause and cheers came from all directions. Win. He won, he finally won. Seeing Ryuto walk towards her in this enthusiastic atmosphere, Yunyan's hanging heart finally relaxed. Perhaps it was because her nerves had been stretched taut during the intense and stimulating viewing process, but after suddenly relaxing, Yunyan realized that she was already sweating profusely and her legs were a little weak. "Ryuto classmate, congratulations." Oh. This kind of physical and mental state caused Yunyan to feel dizzy the moment she stood up, and she fell forward in a daze. Ryuto, who came to the side of the table, supported her and waved the 30 million check in front of Yunyen with a smile. Yunyen, thank you for your support, so please allow me to use this money to treat you to a midnight snack, how about it? Although he had just experienced 3 fierce battles in a row, Long Do's smile was still quite relaxed at this time, perfectly displaying the vitality and vigor that was unique to a young man. At the same time, this smile also entered Yunyen's heart, making her suddenly feel that this little junior seems to be quite handsome. Chapter 105. When the noisy underground fighting ended, Ryuto and Yunyen walked out of the dull underground world. They came to the street outside the Sai-no-hara. It was the beginning of spring. The cool night wind blew on Yunyen's face, making her feel particularly comfortable. Wow! The wind at night is really cool, especially after coming out of that damn place. Looking at the familiar street environment, Yunyen felt for the first time that the things that looked so ordinary looked so beautiful at this time. The underground, Sai-no-hara, and the Tokyo street on the ground. Although it was only separated by a floor, it gave people the feeling that it was 2 different worlds. There was no doubt that the Sai-no-hara area was a different world full of non-everyday for ordinary people. In that underground world, the law of the jungle, where the strong preyed on the weak, was vividly displayed. The strong could have money, status, and beauties. The weak could only become a target or a wanderer responsible for laughing and sleeping. Due to the lack of social morality and laws in this underground world, most of the people had shed their disguises and revealed their beast-like side. The uncle who drank wine on the street and enjoyed himself with wanderers may be a sanctimonious boss during the day. The aunt who smiled strangely at the fighters in the fighting arena may be an official full of benevolence and morality during the day. The Sai-no-hara was a demon's den, which provided them with an excellent vent for those who couldn't do whatever they wanted on the ground. The bad air mixed with the smell of money and desire made Yunyen feel so disgusted that she almost couldn't breathe. Only when she came to the ground could she finally take a few breaths. From a certain point of view, hell and heaven had always been 2 sides of the same coin. After all, as long as you saw hell with your own eyes, then all the places except hell could be called heaven. The meaning of hell was this. However, after coming to the street on the ground, Yunyen couldn't help but turn her head to look at Ryuto, who was walking beside her. She seemed to have a new understanding of this extreme young master. Now, only Yunyen and Dragon Head were walking in this silent night. Furamaki Sotaro had already found a rubbish excuse to sneak away. From Ryuto's point of view, the old man was probably planning to have a good time at the disco in the Sai River Plain. After all, there were many beautiful girls there who wouldn't be angry even if someone touched their buttocks. But now that Sotaro wasn't there to be a third wheel, Yunyen could seriously size up the male student beside her. Ryuto's expression hadn't changed much since he obtained 3 consecutive victories in the ring, the qualification to enter the B-class group, and the 30 million yuan prize money. He always had a faint smile on his face. It was as if to this man, the underground world that was filled with things that Yunyen didn't see as a daily routine. This made it hard for Yunyen to imagine how such a 16-year-old boy could be so indifferent to the ugliness of the world. What kind of life did he live before? Did he live in this kind of hell all day long? If she thought about it at a higher level, Yunyen knew the male student Ryuto Kiryo, who was studying in Dori First High School's 2nd grade Class B. Is the friend who is willing to seriously talk to me about the novel content really the person I know? Ryuto seemed to feel Yunyen's gaze that contained complex emotions, and he also looked at her with a smile. At the same time he asked, "Why are you looking at me with this expression, as if you just know me? I thought I knew you before, but after tonight, I realized that I don't seem to know you as much as I thought. Haha, mystery is also a kind of charm. Although I'm far inferior to you in this aspect, you don't have to be mysterious to be charming, at least I think so." Why would you suddenly say something like this? Really, if I didn't know, I would think that you have some strange thoughts. Hearing Ryuto's words that seemed to be teasing at first, but after listening carefully, it was more or less ambiguous, Yunyen couldn't help but blush and turned her head. Generally speaking, when a man takes the initiative to praise the other party's charm in front of a woman, it more or less has some hidden meaning in it. But for a man like Ryuto, who is a tough guy, he shouldn't make this kind of hint like an ordinary high school student, right? Yunyan thought so. However, who knew that Ryuto replied without hesitation, "Of course, I already have some strange thoughts, you didn't realize until now, right?" Ah! Suddenly, Yunyan was stunned. She was just joking with Ryuto, but who knew that she heard an answer that didn't sound like a joke at all? And this answer sounded a bit like a confession of her feelings? After being stunned for a few seconds, Yunyan asked in a slow voice, "What do you mean by strange thoughts?" "What do you mean?" "It's the strange thoughts that you have in your heart." "How do you know what kind of strange thoughts I have in my heart?" Then let's be more straightforward, Yunyan. Actually, I've liked you for a long time." After hearing Ryuto's sudden and undisguised confession, Yunyan's face suddenly showed a dumbfounded expression. "What's with the expression on your face? It's so strange." No, it's your way of thinking that's strange. How can you make this kind of lightning-like confession that I don't know how to ridicule? It does seem a bit strange, I don't deny this at all." In the face of Yunyan's questioning, Ryuto just nodded slightly and didn't continue. In fact, according to Yunyan's understanding of the romantic act of confession, she couldn't imagine that there would be someone in the world who could say the words, "I like you," in such a relaxed manner like, "Good morning." Shouldn't a normal male high school student's confession be to invite the girl to an empty space, then bashfully blush in front of the girl, and struggle for a long time before saying, I like you, this sentence? But Ryuto was different. In his world, "I like you" was as light as "let's eat something," as if he didn't have to bear any psychological pressure to say it, very forthright. After this, the two walked silently on the street, like a young couple out for a walk at night. However, even though Long Do's face had a calm expression, he still had a calm expression. But Yunyan, who was walking next to him and suddenly received a confession, felt more and more uncomfortable, and her walking posture had subtle changes. Because in just a few minutes, the heart of Miss Suki was really in a mess. Chapter 106. What Should I Do? Ryuto, classmate, actually confessed to me, then I should also respond to him. In fact, before this, Yunyan had rejected hundreds of confessions and had sent out countless good person cards. In this regard, she could be said to be a good person card expert. If it was a normal male student who confessed to her, as long as she casually said a few words, "You are a good person, let's be friends," she would be able to get away with it. But facing Ryuto, Yunyan didn't know what to say. Logically speaking, as long as she said those words as usual, with Ryuto's bold personality, he would definitely not continue to pester her. But for some reason, Yunyan felt that the sentence, 100% proficiency, could not be said. Every time she wanted to open her mouth, the smiling face that had warmed Yunyan not long ago would quickly rush into her mind. In the arena filled with the smell of dirty money and the pungent smell of blood. When Yunyan was about to collapse due to lack of energy, Ryuto, who had finished the match, walked over and held her shoulder. At the same time, he showed her a very handsome smile. At that moment, it was as if the surrounding noise had all disappeared. The whole world only had Yunyan and Ryuto. Facing this kind of Ryuto, Yunyan really couldn't say the words, "You are a good person, let's be friends." Just when Yunyan was feeling incomparably tangled in her heart, Ryuto suddenly stopped and said to her, "Yunyan, it's here, let's go in." "Here? Ah, right, this time we are going out to eat supper." After being reminded by Ryuto, Yunyan realized that the two of them weren't simply walking on the street. In fact, they wanted to find a place to eat supper and relax. In fact, Yunyan had never enjoyed supper, which was a night activity that the people loved to see and hear. After all, as the eldest daughter of the Suki family, Yunyan naturally couldn't run around in the middle of the night. At most, she would eat some exquisite snacks at home. Therefore, Yunyan was still very interested in the supper Ryuto prepared to treat her. This was not an ordinary experience. But when she raised her head to look at the shop in front of her, she was shocked by the situation of the shop. At least from Yunyan's point of view, this small restaurant called Dragon Family Cuisine was almost nothing worth praising. The main entrance was so small that it could only fit two people side by side. Although the curtains hanging on the door were clean, they were already very old. And the wall hung with very outdated posters and signs. If it was only at 12 o'clock in the middle of the night, in any case, she wouldn't walk in the middle of the night. Ryuto-san, this shop. On the surface, it looks very shabby, but I can guarantee that this is the best supper stall in Tokyo. Before Yun-yen could recover from her shock, Long-do smiled and half-pushed, half-pulled her into the rundown shop. After entering the shop, what appeared in front of Yun-yen was a neatly arranged long table, and a large wall of menus hung on the wall. There were dan-dan noodles, handmade dumplings, handmade soup dumplings, boiled fish, boiled meat, sliced beef, spicy chicken, mapo tofu. There were so many dishes on the wall that it almost couldn't fit. Although the front was a bit shabby, the decoration and management of the shop seemed to have put in a lot of effort. Not only was it clean and tidy, but it also made people feel a sense of familial warmth. This made Yun-yen feel relieved after coming in. But at the next moment, the boss who walked out of the kitchen still startled Yun-yen again. When Ryuto shouted inside, the small door of the shop was pushed open. A middle-aged man with an obvious scar on his eye, wearing a blood-stained chef's uniform, and a fierce look in his eyes walked over with a boning knife. In the middle of the night, seeing this kind of appearance was indeed a little scary, and Yun-yen also quickly reached out and grabbed the corner of Ryuto's clothes. But Ryuto didn't care and said to the boss, "I want cold bean sprouts, spicy shrimp, kung pao chicken, and shredded pork with garlic sauce, and 2 bowls of dan-dan noodles." "Yun-yen, do you want medium or strong spicy?" Ryuto turned his head and asked Yun-yen the last sentence. Although it sounded strange, after all, whether it was medium or strong spicy, it didn't seem like something Yun-yen would order. But in fact, Yun-yen was a fan of spicy food. Until now, only the chef in Yun-yan's house knew about Miss Yun's taste. Usually, he would try his best to make some spicy sauce for her during meals. So Yun-yen asked doubtfully, "Wait, how do you know I can eat spicy?" "About this. Actually, you occasionally have a chilly smell on your body." "Hey, really?" Yun-yen heard this and quickly sniffed her arm, but of course, there was no chilly smell. After the two of them teased each other, Yun-yen still chose the strong spicy taste, which made Ryuto feel ashamed. "Are you sure you want the strong spicy? Don't be fooled by the boss's appearance. He went to a food country to learn for 7 or 8 years and came back as a professional chef. He is very heavy-handed. It's okay, I can take it no matter how spicy it is. I won't lose to anyone in this aspect." Under Yun-yen's confident nod, the boss served tonight's supper in order in a short while. After quickly blanching, the cold bean sprout was added with leeks, chives, garlic, chili, aged vinegar, and pepper sesame oil. It was crispy and refreshing, and it was very refreshing when chewed in the mouth. The shelled prawns were fried until golden yellow, and with parsley, pepper, dried red pepper, and other supplementary ingredients, the fried, spicy prawns had a strong spicy taste, and the meat was firm and crisp. The color was gorgeous, and it made people drool. The kung pao chicken, cooked with chicken as the main ingredient, peanuts, chili, and other supplementary ingredients, was fresh and spicy. The freshness of the chicken and the crispness of the fried peanuts were a perfect match. The shredded fish-flavored pork, stir-fried with shredded radish, wood ear, shredded meat, and pickled pepper were finely selected. The finished dish was rosy in color, rich in fish flavor, and had a salty, sweet, sour, and spicy taste. With such a table of dishes in front of her, Yun-yen, who didn't have the habit of eating supper, couldn't help but raise her chopsticks and eat heartily. Every dish is so delicious. It's a taste that I haven't eaten before. That's for sure. Although the boss doesn't look good, his culinary skills are quite good. I can skip the words "don't look good." Next time, just introduce my culinary skills. In the boss's helpless wry smile, 2 bowls of bright red dan-dan noodles were served on the table. At the same time, a cup of draft beer and a cup of sour plum juice were served. The dan-dan noodles were also very delicious. Although it was spicy and oily, it was very satisfying to eat. However, while eating the noodles, Yunyan's gaze fell on the cup of draft beer in Ryuto's hand. Chapter 107. That. Ryuto, what's that in your hand? Draft beer, do you want to drink it too? It's quite refreshing, especially after a fight. No, I mean you're only 16 years old now, why can you drink beer? So you mean I should drink white? Wait, what kind of weird brain circuit is this? I also want to ask you what kind of weird brain circuit you have. You actually told a young master who just killed someone in the underground arena that underage people can't drink. You actually think I care about this? Ryuto couldn't help but laugh, then he picked up the draft beer in his hand and took a big gulp. This seems to be the case. Hearing this, Yunyan suddenly sighed, and then asked as if she finally reacted, the big guy you killed in the end, is he really dead? In fact, not long ago after the third match, Yunyan wanted to ask, but she didn't ask. From any point of view, the big bad guy named Michael the villain should be dead. But other than Yunyan, no one in the underground arena seemed to be surprised by this matter. They seemed to be quite used to it. When he heard this question, Ryuto casually said while eating spicy shrimp, "Well, of course that guy is dead, I killed him." Then you just killed someone, don't you think it's dirty executioner, Michael the villain, a murderer on the run in American, has at least a dozen lives in his hands. Do you think such a person doesn't deserve to die? Of course he deserves to die, but wouldn't it be better to leave it to the law? Actually, first of all, have you ever thought about why the underground area of Fortress River Plain can continue to operate? Nothing in it is legal. Well, there should be some high officials. Ah, I understand now. After hearing Ryuto's hint, Yunyan couldn't help but frown, as if she saw some deeper dirty transactions. Although the underground area of the Sai River Plain was hidden, it was not completely untraceable. Especially with so many people coming and going in that area every day, as long as the government or the police wanted to investigate, there was no reason why they couldn't. However, this underground world had existed for so many years, which meant that there must be some high-ranking officials watching over it. The Sai River Plain was both an underground den of demons and an underground den of gold. The daily flow of money inside was at least in the hundreds of millions. Other than going to the flower merchants, a portion of the money should have been given to the protective umbrella in exchange for the protection of this place. Therefore, even if it was Michael the villain who had fled from abroad, as long as he entered the battle arena, it was equivalent to receiving the protection of those high officials and nobles. Under such circumstances, even the worst murderer would not be punished by the law. This was the reality of the underground world. If I don't kill Michael the villain, he might kill another 10, 20, or even 30 people. Do you think I should do that now? Of course, of course. After understanding the root of everything, Yunyan took a deep breath and loudly said to the boss in the kitchen, "Sorry boss, give me a cup of draft beer." Didn't you just say that I shouldn't drink, why? Don't tell me you were scared by what we just talked about? Humph, I'm a literary author, I won't be so timid. If I don't even dare to look directly at the darkness, how can I write the truth of this world? Well said, come. Cheers for your heroism. Let's do it. Who's afraid of who? After hearing Ryuto's praise, Yunyan grabbed the full cup of draft beer that the boss had just sent over and gulped it down. Compared to the cooked beer that had been sterilized at high temperatures, the draft beer had a more refreshing taste. Furthermore, the alcohol content of this draft beer wasn't high, which made it more suitable for Yunyan, a little girl who hadn't drunk alcohol before. Phew! Refreshing. Because she had just eaten a lot of hot food, her body was a little hot, and she had also sweated a lot. This big mouthful of refreshing draft beer immediately made Yunyan feel refreshed. I've decided, next time when I write a Valentine's Day scene, I'll arrange for the female lead to give the male lead a big can of draft beer, and the two of them can drink it. No matter how much you like to drink this stuff, it's too much to give it on Valentine's Day. Really? Then how about changing it to Dan Dan noodles? This is also very delicious. You're really a genius. Can't you give chocolate normally? But everyone gives chocolate. If I write like this, there's no novelty, I like to write things that can make people feel novel. In the midst of the two's teasing, the dishes on the table were gradually cleared, and the glasses were also filled to the brim. More than an hour later, when Ryuto helped Yun Yen out of the small restaurant, she was so drunk that she couldn't even recognize her own mother. Are you kidding me? To drink like this, you really don't treat me as an outsider. Looking at Yun Yen, who reeked of alcohol, her cheeks were red, and her eyes were wandering, Ryuto couldn't help but lightly flick her forehead. Generally speaking, it was very dangerous for young men and women to drink outside, especially for girls. Before getting drunk, in a tavern, after waking up, in a hotel, lying next to a white pig eating cabbage, no one would want to encounter this kind of situation. But fortunately, Ryuto was a mature and steady gentleman, and he would never take advantage of others. Therefore, if he were to carry the drunk senior sister Yun Yen to the hotel or something, that would be totally… My head is dizzy. Just then, Yun Yen suddenly twisted in a daze, and tightly hugged Ryuto's arm, and a pair of plump slimes also tightly stuck to him. So if he carried the drunk Yun Yen to a hotel or something, Ryuto had no intention of doing so. Rubbing, and twisting. Cough cough, he didn't even think about it. Calm down, bastard. Although I'm a blonde, I'm not that kind of blonde. After hitting his head, Ryuto hurriedly carried Yun Yen into the car. This black car was called by him not long ago, and the one sitting inside was naturally his personal driver, Narukai Otani. But when Narukai saw Ryuto carrying a drunk beauty into the car, he revealed a wretched smile. Narukai even asked with a smile, second-generation head, are we going home? Or to a hotel? By the way, I know of a nice hotel with a rotating waterbed. Stop talking nonsense. Go to her house. It's the place where I picked her up. After hearing Narukai's words, Ryuto hurriedly kicked his seat, and at the same time, he glanced at Yun Yen who was lying on the chair. But the scary thing was, Yun Yen opened her eyes in a daze, and asked in confusion, rotating waterbed, what is that? Chapter 108. To be honest, when he heard Yun Yen ask this question, Ryuto was really numb. God above, he really didn't know how to explain these things to Yun Yen. The key was that Ryuto himself didn't understand it very well. Unlike Narukai, who was experienced, Ryuto was really a pure creature like a white lotus. A 16-year-old boy was just like that. So the round bed, waterbed, revolving bed, hammock, red bed, electric bed, happy chair, yoga ball, handcuffs, eye mask, mouth ball, flea, whip, candle, rabbit tail plug and other things that often appeared in strange rooms, Ryuto had never heard of any of them, and he didn't know what they were used for. So he had to start to change the topic and said to Narukai, hurry up, it's already very late. We have to send Yun Yen back quickly. Okay, second-generation leader, Wait, let's talk about it. Clearly, revolving waterbed, what is it? But he didn't know what aroused Yun Yen's strong curiosity. At the moment when the car started, she suddenly bounced up from the chair and grabbed Ryuto's collar and continued to ask. Because the car was accelerating, senior sister Yun Yan's bounce directly knocked Long Do to the side, forming a wonderful position where one was on top and the other was below. The former seemed to become particularly bold after being drunk, and she even leaned her head over. Rumble. In this way, with the sudden acceleration of the black car, the speed of the car in the back seat also soared. After being pushed down by Yun Yen, Ryuto quickly reached out to support her body and whispered, Yun Yen. Too close, too close. There are still people in front. Oh, I suddenly want to listen to music. I'll use my soundproof earplugs to play a rock song to make sure that I can't hear anything. Then put on the baffle, and I won't know what will happen next. Just when Ryuto turned his head to look at Narukai in the front seat, Narukai also made a series of actions while driving at lightning speed. He first quickly put on the 100% soundproof headphones, then pulled out a pure black baffle from nowhere and blocked between the front and back seats, dividing the whole car into two parts. This is good. Although it's a little early, it seems like our third-generation team leader has been settled. After quickly doing all this, Narukai sighed in his heart. But no matter what Narukai thought, Ryuto never thought of this. He never thought of working with Yunyen to assemble the Rulong Group's third-generation leader, so early. Narukai, that bastard, who does he think I am? Will I mess around in a speeding car? After seeing that the bastard Narukai actually thought that he would mess around in the car, Ryuto was really angry. Are you kidding me? I'm a man of steel. How can I be rude to a drunk woman? I'll say it here, even if I, Ryuto Kiryu, am a bachelor for the rest of my life, die in the hands of Iam, and jump out of the car, I won't touch Yunyen at all. Thinking of this, Long Do immediately froze. He hurriedly reached out and pushed senior sister Yunyen away. Then, he smashed the baffle in front of him with a punch and jumped into the co-pilot seat. Seeing that Ryuto actually destroyed the third-generation incubation device that he carefully prepared, Narukai quickly took off the headphones and asked, "Ah? Second King Yenluo, you. Shut up. Control the speed honestly. If you continue to drive recklessly, we will all die." After scolding Narukai, Ryuto looked at Yunyen, who had already laid down in the back seat and seemed to be slowly falling asleep. He finally felt a little relieved. It was too difficult. The game with Yunyen just now was more difficult than fighting in the arena 3 times in a row. Yunyen was naturally seductive. She was born with a beautiful appearance and temperament. Few young men didn't feel tempted when facing her. Especially when she was drunk and leaning on him softly, that kind of seduction was really terrifying. But even so, Ryuto wouldn't mess around, let alone really fragrant. After all, this was not something that could be really fragrant, it was a major event that concerned her life. The most important thing for a man was to take care of his zipper. He couldn't just unzip it, that would really be too shitty. Therefore, Ryuto simply jumped directly into the co-pilot cabin to avoid the wonderful torture of the rotating waterbed. In this way, on the streets of Tokyo illuminated only by streetlights, the car drove to the rich villa area where Tsutsumira was located at a speed that wouldn't affect Yunyen's rest. After stopping on the familiar street, Ryuto went to the back seat, opened the door, and gently shook Yunyen, who was lying in the back seat, awake. "Wake up, Yunyen, we're home." As she lightly swayed her tall and voluptuous body, Yunyan's large eyes that were filled with divine charm also slowly opened. She looked at Long Do, who had a difficult expression on his face. "Have we arrived?" She shook her head, straightened her back and sat up, and asked in a slightly hoarse voice. "Phew, you scared me. I was so afraid that you wouldn't wake up. Then I didn't know how to send you back." Ryuto breathed a sigh of relief, took a bottle of mineral water and handed it to Yunyen, and watched her gulp it down. After that, he supported the senior sister who was still a little delirious, but much better than before, back to the remote corner of Tsutsumira. Yes, that is, back to the railing that gave Ryuto a huge visual impact before. "Yunyen, can you walk in by yourself?" "It should be fine. I'm much better now." After letting go of Ryuto's hand that had been holding her, Yunyen walked to the gap in the railing without looking back. Her movements were not very nimble as she went back in. What happened? Yunyen doesn't seem to be very happy. Since Yunyen woke up in the car, she has been giving off a strange feeling, as if she didn't dare to face Ryuto. Did I make her angry? As expected, taking her out for a drink in the middle of the night is a bit… Ryuto too? Ahem. Ryuto. Just as Ryuto was about to leave, Yunyen turned her head and called him with a strange tone. "Yunyen, is there anything else? It's just your previous confession, I haven't replied to you yet." "Oh it's okay, it's the good guy card, I know what I'm doing." Ryuto turned his head and smiled at Yunyen when he heard this, and replied very straightforwardly. It was true that he liked senior sister Yunyen, but that sudden confession not long ago was just because he was in the mood, so he casually said what was in his heart. Therefore, from the beginning, Ryuto didn't expect to receive a serious reply. However, who would have thought that Yunyen would shake her head and use a shy tone to say, "Actually, if you don't mind, I think we can give it a try." Chapter 109. After so many male confessions in the past, Yunyen gave a different reply for the first time. I think we can try it. When Yunyen said these words, she only felt that her face was burning, and her heartbeat became extremely fast. Because for her, this was a 0% proficiency, a reply that she had never given before. What? I didn't hear it wrong, right? At the same time, when he heard Yunyen's reply, Ryuto couldn't help but pinch his thigh to make sure that he was not dreaming. Isn't that right? How is it possible? After going out to have fun tonight and sending Yunyen back, she seemed to have agreed to Ryuto's previous confession? So Ryuto quickly took a deep breath and asked seriously, Wait, Yunyen, do you mean what I understand? It means what you understand. That's right. How do you know what I understand? Well, then let's be more straightforward. I think we can try to develop a relationship as a couple. Although she was a little embarrassed, Yunyen still expressed her thoughts very straightforwardly. As for why she was suddenly willing to develop a relationship with Ryuto, it was because of the consequences caused by a few glasses of draft beer. Although drinking too much beer would make one drunk, the speed of this kind of drunkenness was much faster than drinking white wine. So not long ago, on the way back, Yunyen, who was in a daze, had already sobered up. The moment she woke up, the previous confused memories poured into Yunyen's mind. Especially the scene of her entangling Ryuto and pushing him to the back seat, Yunyen couldn't help but cover her face in embarrassment. She secretly blamed herself for doing such a shameless thing. But after that, Ryuto's response made Yunyen feel very warm. Under the premise of clearly expressing his feelings, in the face of Yunyen taking the initiative to throw herself into his arms, Ryuto still chose to run away and didn't take advantage of her while drunk. Yunyen was naturally aware of her unique and amazing charm. Her temperament was like a dose of poison, so poisonous that it was difficult for people to withstand it, let alone in the situation where she took the initiative to throw herself into his arms. Therefore, in this state, Ryuto was still able to resist the urge to make a move on her. His image in Yunyen's heart suddenly increased. Judging from the situation tonight, Ryuto seemed to be quite trustworthy. It seemed that dating him wasn't a bad thing. So on the way back, Yunyen kept thinking about this matter. After all, no matter what, Yunyen was only a 17-year-old young girl. It was natural for her to be curious and longing for love. Since the right person had already appeared, youth was too short. Why not try to start a relationship? Therefore, Yunyen gave her answer clearly. Of course, after understanding Yunyen's meaning, Ryuto couldn't help but tremble. No way. My God, I have 18 years in my previous life and 16 years in this life. In this life of 32 years, I finally have a girlfriend for the first time? Under the dim moonlight, Yunyen on the other side of the railing looked as beautiful as the moon goddess. And if he thought that such a beauty was going to be his girlfriend, it would be even more beautiful. So Ryuto couldn't help but laugh. Haha, this is great. From now on, senior sister Yunyen will be mine. Logically speaking, at this time, as long as Ryuto agreed, then he could live a shameless life starting tomorrow. But at the moment when he was about to agree, his mind suddenly flashed a memory not long ago. In the memory, Ryuto was standing face to face with a black-haired girl with a classical beauty, and she was also stretching out her white and delicate hand. If I don't need to be the Hakusho in 2 years, I'll go to your place and be the wife of the team leader. That should be fine, right? In the memory, the girl with a helpless smile reached out and held Ryuto's hand, and her eyes flashed with a complicated expression. The girl with a complicated expression was naturally the first person Ryuto confessed to, Kanzaki Colored Glaze. At this time, although Yunyen agreed to be his girlfriend, what about Colored Glaze? She was still waiting in the cage of Komiyoshi, waiting for the dawn to come. Could Ryuto abandon her? Thinking of this, Ryuto couldn't help but shake his head and said to Yunyen, Yunyen, I do like you, but there is something I have to be honest with you. Is it a problem with your identity and background? It's fine, I have a way to make my family not object. When Ryuto showed such an attitude, Yunyen's first thought was that he was concerned about her terrible family background. Everyone knew that the boss of the Tsukimi Corporation loved their daughter Yun Yen very much, so he naturally didn't want his daughter to be together with Ryuto, an extreme leader who wandered the underworld. However, Yun Yen had read so many romance novels over the years. She hadn't read them for nothing. After all, such situations of family opposition often appeared in novels, so there were naturally many effective solutions. The basic solution was to cry, throw a tantrum, and hang oneself. The intermediate solution was to directly run away from home, and the highest solution was to directly get married. In short, in Yun Yen's opinion, the family's opposition wasn't a problem, and Ryuto didn't need to worry about it. At worst, he could just try all the high school and high schools. Of course, what Yun Yen thought was 100% wrong. After all, what Ryuto wanted to confess was not the family problem, but, in fact, in addition to you, I have 2 women I like. Ah! When she heard Ryuto's confession, Yun Yen was stunned, although this was a normal reaction. What is this? You just said that you liked me not long ago, and then you turn around and say that there are 2 other women you like besides me. After being stunned for a few seconds, Yun Yen said dumbfoundedly, "Don't tell me that you haven't decided yet, and you haven't decided which one to choose from the 3 of us?" No, I actually decided a long time ago. I want all 3, including you." For the second time, Ryuto made this harem declaration in front of the woman he liked for the second time. It was still the same shameless attitude and the same firm tone. Anyone who heard it would know that he was definitely not making a joke that wasn't funny. It had to be said that these words sounded a bit ridiculous, perhaps in front of a girl who had just agreed to be his girlfriend. After hearing this, Yun Yen lowered her head slightly, making it impossible for people to see the change in her expression. Then, the young miss of the Tsukumi family asked in a creepy tone, "Who? Ah? You? What did you say?" "I said, who are the other 2? Wait a minute. There's something wrong with her tone. She's not going to take a knife and chop up the other 2, right? I don't remember Yun Yen being sick and delicate, right?" Even though he felt his scalp go numb, Ryuto still said honestly, "Kanzaki-colored glaze and Saitu Dunya." After saying these 2 names, Ryuto looked at Yun Yen, who had lowered her head, in fear, as if he wanted to know if she would explode in anger. But in the next moment, Yun Yen quickly raised her head and replied in a calm tone, "So it's them. That's easy." Chapter 110. It had to be said that Yun Yen's reply was really beyond Ryuto's expectation. In Ryuto's view, such a girl who had just fallen in love, when she heard that the person who was about to be her boyfriend had 2 other women that she liked, she would be furious. It should be impossible for her to say, "It's them. That's easy," so casually, right? If it's light, she would scold him. If it's heavy, she would turn hostile on the spot. Isn't this the reaction of a normal woman? So when Ryuto confessed his harem purpose to her, he was already prepared to be scolded by Yun Yen on the spot, and then he would use some methods to coax her back. Who knew that Ryuto liked to take the unusual path, but he didn't expect that Yun Yen seemed to be such a strange person in this regard. She actually didn't have a big reaction to the harem declaration, which was simply incredible. So he could only scratch his head and say, "That, Yun Yen? Do you actually understand what I mean?" "I understand. In addition to liking me, you also like colored glaze and dunya. You want to take us all home. What's so difficult to understand? Under the situation that you understand, for my extremely rude and shameless harem declaration, you don't have anything to be unhappy about." Of course there is, but it can't be helped, right? And many heroes in novels also have multiple wives. For example, Minamoto no Minamoto in The Tale of Genji even had more than a dozen wives. No, that's ancient times. It's modern now. There is a crime of bigamy in this year. Is your brain circuit a bit strange? It's obviously your brain circuit that is a bit strange. You just killed someone in the underground arena, and you still care about a crime of bigamy? At this moment, Yun Yan's rhetorical question was obviously the same as what Long Do had said when he was drinking. However, it had to be said that it sounded quite reasonable. As the second generation of the extreme Tao, Ryuto couldn't be said to have committed all kinds of crimes, but at the very least, he had a reputation for being evil. A mere bigamy crime couldn't even be considered as an addition to his reputation. But even so, Ryuto couldn't help but continue to ask, "But won't you feel wronged if you have to share your lover with other women?" "Well, if it's Colored Glaze and Dunia, then it's still acceptable. But if it's anyone else, then it can only be the two of them. Otherwise, you'll have to bear the consequences." Yunyen shook her head firmly, as if warning Ryuto not to push his luck. Otherwise, Copper Skin Mastery and Iron Bone Mastery would not have been able to withstand a three-man hatchet, even with 100% mastery. Of course, one of the main reasons why Yunyen could accept it was because Colored Glaze and Dunia were her good friends, and they were also very good people with excellent character and appearance, and they were very pleasant to get along with. Sharing the same man with these two women who were very good and got along well with her was not that difficult for her to accept. Another reason why Yunyen could accept it was that Ryuto told her all his thoughts before the two of them officially established their relationship, which made Yunyen feel the man's sincerity. Telling her in advance that he was preparing to start a harem before the two of them started a relationship would have to bear the huge risk of being dumped on the spot, so normal people would not do this. Under normal circumstances, Ryuto could completely not tell Yunyen that he was thinking of the other two women, and first become lovers with her. Telling her after the deed was done, or simply hiding it from her and secretly dating the other two was a very convenient choice for Ryuto. This way, he would not have to bear the risk of being dumped if he told her in advance, and he would definitely be able to get the beauty back. However, Ryuto chose to bear the risk, and clearly told Yunyen his purpose in advance, and also made sure that she understood what it meant. This way, Yunyen could make a choice early, whether she was willing to share Ryuto with the other two, or turn around and leave, and withdraw from the relationship. From this point, it could be seen that Ryuto had already given the women he liked the greatest degree of respect. Although he was still a playboy who wants them all, the kind who deserve to be hacked to death by women. But no matter what, after completely winning Yunyen's approval, the two of them still made great progress in their relationship. In short, "I'll go back first, see you at school tomorrow." Before leaving, Yunyen smiled and waved to Ryuto, and her figure disappeared into the night of Tsutsumira Betsuin. But just when Ryuto returned to the black car and rushed home, his brain still had a buzzing feeling. Really? Did all of this really happen? I'm really in a relationship with Yunyen now? And she allowed me to start a harem? Is there such a good thing in the world? Generally speaking, this was impossible. After all, in this era, there were not many women who allowed their men to have other women. But fortunately, Yunyen in Tsutsumi was definitely not equal to ordinary women. From a certain point of view, she was actually a weirdo whose brain circuit was stranger than Ryuto's. But in this case, as long as I can deal with Colored Glaze and Dunia, Dunia should be the most difficult to deal with. She is very possessive. As for Colored Glaze... By the way, what is Colored Glaze's attitude towards my harem declaration? When sitting in the car speeding on the streets of Tokyo at night, Ryuto suddenly thought of this serious problem. Speaking of which, Colored Glaze was the first heroine to hear Ryuto's shameless harem declaration, but she didn't seem to have made a statement about it. When she heard this declaration, Colored Glaze just asked him to leave indifferently and didn't say anything else. When the two met again, it was the same as usual. There was nothing special. So for a while, Ryuto couldn't figure out Colored Glaze's attitude towards this matter. Forget it, I'll ask clearly. It's too annoying to be unclear. Although it's a happy annoyance. When he heard Ryuto talking to himself, Narukai, who was sitting in the driver's seat, quickly turned around and asked, "What did you say just now? Do you have any orders?" Nothing. I just feel that I suddenly have such a beautiful girlfriend, I can't accept this reality. Indeed, I have never seen such a beautiful person like Yunyen in my life. Only a beauty like her is worthy of you. Narukai, your flattery skills have improved. No, it's all from the bottom of my heart. Speaking of this, Ryuto and Narukai both laughed, and the car was filled with a cheerful atmosphere. However, Narukai wasn't actually flattering, he was telling the truth. Yunyen was such a beautiful woman. If anyone could fall in love with her and create another little person, then even if they died, they wouldn't die in vain. Moreover, Ryuto now also thought so. Even if he was hit by a car on the spot, he would have no regrets in his life. Creak. Boom. So in the next second, a slightly bulky construction truck suddenly crashed from the side, directly hitting the side of the black car that Ryuto and Narukai were sitting in. Chapter 111. Have you ever experienced being hit by a construction truck from the side? Have you experienced the feeling of your car rolling on the ground and finally crashing to the ground? If not, congratulations, your life is very normal. If you have, congratulations too, your life in the other world must be very exciting. But Ryuto didn't fly to the other world. After all, he couldn't die without spending all his money. What exactly happened to me? When Ryuto woke up after a series of flying and bumps, he only felt like his body was falling apart. His ears were buzzing, the things in front of him were shaking, and his nose was full of the smell of gasoline. After being stunned for a few seconds, Ryuto's eyes gradually became clear. The first thing he could see was the blood-stained street floor. Today's night was darker, and the moonlight wasn't that bright, but the blood on the ground was still very obvious. Then, next to the blood was Narukai Otani, who was like a puppet with a broken string, twisted on the ground. That's right, it was Narukai Otani, the subordinate who was happily chatting with Ryuto a few seconds ago. But at this time, Narukai was obviously unable to speak. Because his neck, hands, and feet were all twisted at strange angles, and his body was covered in blood. And next to the obviously dead Narukai, the black car with the mark of the dragon on the hood, which was carrying two people, was also like a pile of scrap metal, maintaining its flipped position. The car's windows were shattered, and a huge dent could be seen on the side of the car with the naked eye. Obviously, what happened to Ryuto was called a traffic accident. If he remembered correctly, it was because a huge mud truck had appeared out of nowhere in the middle of the night and knocked Long-Do's car away. Because Ryuto's physical fitness was strong, and he also had two passive skills, he didn't die in the accident, but Narukai Otani in the front seat wasn't so lucky. What are you doing, bastard? When Ryuto dragged his numb body and struggled to stand up, he immediately looked at the dark road behind him, trying to see where the truck that knocked him flying was. This road was a remote road toward the Kamishimachi area. The road was quite narrow, and there were very few pedestrians and vehicles on the road in the middle of the night. But even so, a truck suddenly rushed out in the middle of the night and knocked him and his car flying. It was difficult to think of it as a normal accident. Was it an accident? No, it didn't look like an accident. Could it be that someone wanted to? You're still alive, your luck is really bad. Before Long-Do could react, a voice as cold as the frost of the Northern Kingdom drifted into his ears from behind. Behind? Wait. There's someone behind me? How did he? Although he didn't know when the other side came to the back, Ryuto made a prompt decision and rushed forward. He quickly opened up a distance. It was at the moment he rushed out, a piano string that was almost invisible in the night took away a bunch of hair on Ryuto's head. Of course, if he didn't rush forward in time, it wouldn't be as simple as his hair being taken away. This guy, is he a professional assassin? As Ryuto quickly landed on the ground in front of him and stood up while enduring the pain, a man who looked quite beautiful under the moonlight appeared not far away. It was hard to imagine that a man would actually use the word beautiful to describe him. He had a handsome face that was as angular as a classical sculpture, a pair of gentle blue eyes, fair skin, and a head of golden hair that was more dazzling than gold. Such a coquettish appearance, coupled with the particularly slender body in the elegant suit, set off this man as handsome as coming out of an oil painting. If you just looked at the appearance, I'm afraid anyone would treat this man as a model or a star. But it was a pity that this man named Kaijua didn't have such a glamorous profession. Because he was a professional assassin, and he was the leader of the professional assassins. At the same time when he saw the man, the rogue analysis mirror in Ryuto's eyes also quickly fed back the information about his attributes. Name, Georgy Mihailovich Kaiser. Age, 30 years old. Attributes: Intellect LV3, Physique LV3, Courage LV4, Insight LV3, Charm LV3. If one were to look at the attributes of this assassin named Kaijua, he could be considered a top expert second only to that monster Yongji among all the enemies Long Do had encountered. His attributes were all balanced, with no flaws to be found in any aspect. The most important thing was that from the piano line that was faintly emitting a cold light during his operation and the accident, just now, this man named Kaijua was obviously a veteran killer. A true professional assassin. Just the feeling he gave off was not something that the scoundrel Mike in the underground fighting arena could compare to. Michael the villain was huge and looked terrifying, but if Kaiser wanted to kill him, it wouldn't be much harder than killing a pig. From a certain point of view, killing Li Mo Chen wasn't much harder than killing a pig. If you had died in that car accident, you wouldn't have died by my hands. What a pity. Just as Ryuto was sizing up this assassin from the land of ice and snow, Kaiser shook his head and spoke in a sad tone. However, Long Do did not reply. Instead, he quickly checked the condition of his body. His legs, arms, and other parts of his body were fractured in dozens of places. Moreover, when he used force, he felt a sharp pain in his abdomen. He couldn't even open his palms. No, I can't fight in this state. Seeing that Kaijua was getting closer and closer to him, Long Do slowly retreated while trying to think of a way to survive. If he was in perfect condition, he wouldn't mind sparring with this assassin named Kaiser. But as someone who just went through a serious car accident, not to mention sparring, it was already a miracle that he didn't collapse on the spot. Although he had a gun in his inventory, his severely fractured arms couldn't hold it and aim. He could barely hold the gun to scare people, but it was useless against a professional assassin. Therefore, from all angles, this was an absolute dead end. There was no chance of survival at all. Since he was going to die, then so be it. But before he died, he had to get some information. So Ryuto pondered for a second or two before sitting down like a hoodlum. He said to Kaiser, "You win, but before you kill me, can you let me know?" "I refuse." Ryuto wanted to say, "Before I die, can you let me know who wants to kill me?" But before he could finish his sentence, a thin piano string wrapped around Long Do's neck, accompanied by a cold, "I refuse." Then, his vision flew up and he fell into darkness. Chapter 112. Bastard, I'm just a worker. Do you have to work so hard? Will it kill you to say more? Just when he was killed by the assassin named Kaiser with a piano wire, Ryuto couldn't help but curse in his heart. Traditional villains would say a lot of things before killing the protagonist, and most of them wouldn't even be able to kill the protagonist. In the end, the assassin that Long Do met killed him without even saying a single word. Such professional ethics. Was he planning to compete for the Top 10 Outstanding Assassin Award? Detected that the host is on the verge of death, an emergency rescue plan is about to be initiated by spending 800,000 yen to erase the fact of death. Beep 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 beep. Erase successful. After experiencing the familiar darkness on the other side, along with the familiar system revival prompt, Ryuto's eyes once again appeared the railing on the side of Tsutsumi Rebetsuen. Before dying this time, he deliberately changed to the title of Desperado to reduce the revival cost by 20%. It was better than nothing. 200,000 yen wasn't much, but it wasn't little either. After saving a few times, he could still buy a skill. At this moment, from the courtyard on the other side of the railing, he could vaguely see Yunyen's figure skipping away. However, Yunyen couldn't have imagined that the boy who just established a relationship with her would immediately become a strange body art under the collision of the car and the steel wire. Seriously, can't you let me go home happily and have a wet dream? Why must an assassin come and mess with me at this time? Suddenly, Ryuto helplessly walked toward the car where Narukai was. At the same time, he took out his phone and dialed a familiar phone number. Beep 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 beep. The phone was connected after more than 10 seconds. From the other end of the phone came an obviously confused male voice. Because it was already 1 o'clock in the night, sensible Goro who received the call asked in a daze, "Boss, what's the matter?" "It's so late. I'm being chased by an assassin. Go and see if you can find a guy named Georgy Mihailovich Kaiser." Find out who he is and who he has seen recently. Understood. Keep in touch. After hearing Ryuto's words, Sensible on the other end of the phone immediately woke up and turned on the huge military-grade special computer beside his bed. In terms of investigating the identity of an assassin, there were probably not many people in the world who could do better than Sensible. After all, he was a cyber detective who could even hack into the core system of the police station. If that was the case, it wouldn't take long to find out the killer's identity. Even if he used a fake name, there would still be some clues left behind. The next problem would be the car. Thinking of this, his exclusive black car with a dragon's mark on the hood appeared at the corner of the street. From Ryuto's point of view, the car that he was used to was like a time bomb that could explode at any time. While walking towards the car, Ryuto's fingers quickly slid across the phone's keyboard as if he was sending a long text message to someone. Second generation leader, you're back. When he saw Ryuto walking towards him, Narrate, who was smoking in the driver's seat, quickly stood up and was ready to open the door for him. Narrate, I just sent you a text message to ask you to buy something. Why didn't you reply? Text message? Sorry, I didn't see it. After hearing Ryuto's reminder, Narrate quickly opened the phone and opened the text message that had just been sent. Then, his face suddenly changed. Because the content of this text message was, our car may be installed with listening devices and locators. Don't talk nonsense from now on. That's right, at least from the previous situation, Ryuto thought there was a high probability that his car was tampered with. Recalling the situation where he was directly hit by the truck not long ago, the assassin named Kaiser clearly knew when Ryuto's car would pass by the intersection. In the middle of the night where visibility was quite poor, if there was no device similar to a locator, it would be difficult to hit so accurately. Although listening devices and locators may also be in small things such as phones, compared to the phones carried by the 2G DAO, it was much simpler to tamper with a car. Let's go back first, but I want to sleep in the car, so drive steadily. After patting Narrate's shoulder, Ryuto sat in the car, but this time he sat in the back seat. Okay, you take your time to rest. Narrate was also experienced. Although he encountered an unexpected incident, he still didn't panic. He still calmly sat in the driver's seat and started the car. As the car started, Ryuto sat in the back seat and looked at the time while looking at the map of Yoto on his phone. From Tsutsumi Rebetsuin to the place where the previous collision occurred, it was about 15 minutes away. If he drove slowly, he could use more than 20 minutes. And if I remember correctly, the accident should have happened here before. After looking for a while, Ryuto locked onto a street not far from Kamishito, which was also the place where Kaiser was going to ambush him with the mud truck. Under the premise of knowing such a thing, it was not difficult for Ryuto to escape this disaster. Although Kaiser has a locator that can roughly determine the distance and direction of the car. But after all, he was driving an engineering mud truck. If he really wanted to race, it was impossible for him to outrun Ryuto's Hummer. However, what Ryuto wanted at this time was not to escape Kaiser's pursuit, but to capture that guy. Capture him alive. After all, this assassin who suddenly appeared was really outrageous. Ryuto was eager to know who he was. Of course, although Ryuto did have a super enemy, Tenmu Iam, today's incident should have nothing to do with Iam. After all, if it was an assassin sent by Iam, then before killing Ryuto, he would inevitably record a video of him having fun, and he would never let Ryuto die so quickly. But that assassin called Kaijua was terrifyingly efficient. Not to mention recording a video, he didn't even bother to say a word to Ryuto and directly killed him. This was not the style of Iam's people at all. Therefore, the probability of sending Kaiser to assassinate Ryuto was not Iam, but someone else. For the bastard who dared to send an assassin to kill him, Ryuto had to find him no matter what. From this point of view, it was best to capture Kaiser alive, which would maximize the probability of finding the mastermind behind the scenes. Decided. Let's give that guy a mantis stalks the cicada, unaware of the oriole behind. After quickly making a plan in his mind, Ryuto gently opened the left side of the back seat, and then made a slow-down gesture to Narrate in front of him. When Narrate slowed down the car again, making it no different from a bicycle. Ryuto's entire body turned outward and landed on the street outside like a gymnast. Chapter 113. Then, Ryuto quickly stopped a taxi under the stunned gaze of the passers-by. After sitting in the taxi, he put the map on his phone in front of the driver and said, "Drive here as fast as you can, it doesn't matter if you exceed the speed limit." "Ah. Dear customer, your request is..." "Ah." Before the taxi driver could react, a stack of 200,000 yuan was already in front of him. This 200,000 yuan was saved by the title, Desperado, when he was resurrected. It would be a waste if he didn't use it. After handing over the money, Ryuto continued, "Keep the change, drive as fast as you can, I have a life-related matter." Oh. Very good. Then you found the right person. It was unknown if it was the 200,000 yuan bill that had moved him, or if it was the human life that had moved him. In short, the taxi driver immediately switched his car stereo to his favorite music, Age Your Dream. Charge. For the glory of the driver. Along with the passionate music, the driver stepped on the accelerator with a loud bang. The car almost hit a nearby electric pole and almost sent Long Do away on the spot again. Actually, Long Do had hoped that they would arrive at their destination quickly. However, this driver's driving style was really too awesome. The small taxi made a beast-like roar and sped on the street at a speed that made people feel like they ate gunpowder. Inertia drift. Brake drift. Jump overtake. 90 degrees sharp turn. Gutter turn. The driver's left hand was swinging the gear lever as if he was dancing, while his right hand was playing with the steering wheel like a teenager playing discs. At the same time, his whole body was rocking non-stop, just like his lost youth. Looking at the driver's driving posture and the speed that was almost exploding on the dashboard, if it was a normal passenger, his pants would be wet on the spot. Is this driver okay? Is it okay for a retired driver to drive a taxi? But it doesn't matter, it's just 800,000 yuan. Just like that, under the crazy driving of the driver, the Ryudo sped through the streets and alleys of Tokyo at an amazing speed. It was as if he was riding an AE-86 through 5 consecutive hairpin turns. But even so, Ryuto quickly calmed down and dialed another familiar number in the car. That's it. Find the largest tonnage with the best protective measures. Be careful not to make too much noise. The faster the better. When hanging up the phone, Ryuto took a deep breath and looked at the rapidly changing night scene of Tokyo outside the window. He silently prayed that he could reach the destination alive. Of course, after Ryuto swayed in this torrent for 5 minutes, he barely arrived near the destination. Before getting out of the car, Ryuto smiled at the driver. "Thank you very much. Ugh, your driving skill is great. My organs didn't come out." "No problem. This is my business card. Call me if you have such an urgent task in the future." Looking at Ryuto, who reached out to cover his mouth and open the door, the driver enthusiastically gave him a thumbs up. "I'll go first. It will be troublesome if I'm caught by the traffic police. After all, I don't have a license. Bye." After leaving the last sentence that sounded extremely dangerous, the taxi driver quickly fled the scene, leaving Ryuto standing alone in the cold night wind. It's not easy to live. Forget it, Kawaki Nan should be here soon. Suddenly, Ryuto turned his head and looked around. There were few people around this dim street. After all, it was already night, and this was the remote end of the street. It's just that the street where Ryuto was now happened to be at the other end of the street where Kaiser was lying in ambush. If he rushed to the left end of this street, he should be able to see Kaiser waiting quietly with the mud truck. In other words, Ryuto had already come behind the assassin, behind the mud truck that almost killed him not long ago. There are still about 10 minutes before Narukai arrives here. If Kawaki Nan doesn't drag it out too much, it should be enough. In this way, Ryuto first walked quietly along the street for a while. He saw the familiar mud truck parked at the intersection. The blonde assassin was sitting in the car, so he stopped and quietly returned along the road. Now that the target has been determined, Ryuto only had to wait in the cold night wind. He was waiting for a a man who liked butts very much. About 13 minutes later, the man arrived as promised. He was driving a conspicuous, huge, yellow, heavy-duty road roller. This roller looked a whole size bigger than an ordinary car, and there was a huge round wheel in front. It looked like a yellow steel monster when driving on the road. When the roller stopped beside Ryuto, a familiar head poked out of the car. Second-generation leader. Kamida Kawaki-nan is here to report. The heavy vehicle and collision protection equipment you want have been found. Suddenly, as Ryuto's loyal subordinate, the black-clothed Kyoto who usually likes to watch wrestling movies with his brother, Ando, jumped out of the car and bowed respectfully to Ryuto. Although there were many people in the Rulon group that could be used, Ryuto trusted the most were the three people who had gone through life and death with him, namely Narukai Otani, Kamida Kawaki-nan, and Kamida Ando. Although the names of the two brothers were not very pleasant to the ears, their loyalty was still guaranteed and they were quite efficient when it came to doing things. So they're here. Very good. Ryuto looked at the heavy roller, and then looked at the 3-in-1 set of collision protection suit, helmet, and cushion in Kawaki-nan's hand, and couldn't help but nod to him. Then Ryuto asked seriously, Kawaki-nan, there is a task for you to do now, but it may be a little dangerous. Yes. Please instruct me. Put on this collision protection suit, drive this road roller down this street, and smash a construction truck at the end of the street into smithereens. Do you dare to do it? Hey, why wouldn't I dare? It's a piece of cake. Although Kawaki-nan was naive and liked wrestling, he was still an official member of the Rulon group, so it was natural for him to perform similar tasks. So Kawaki-nan didn't even hesitate to put on the collision protection suit, helmet, and cushion in front of him. After that, he got on the heavy roller again. Charge! For the glory of the Rulon group. After an angry roar, Kawaki-nan drove the roller toward the other side of the road. It was late at night now, and there was no one around this empty street, which made it convenient for Kawaki-nan to drive the roller forward. However, just as the roller was coming from the other side of the street, Kaiser, who was sitting on the truck with a red wine glass, elegantly waited for the arrival of the prey. Chapter 114. My name is Georgy Mihailovich Kaiser, 30 years old. I'm an assassin. I don't have a fixed residence, I'm unmarried, and I work for an assassin organization called Executor. I have to work overtime every day until 8 in the morning before I can go home. I smoke 10 packs of cigarettes a day, and I can't get enough alcohol. I go to bed at 8 in the morning and sleep for 3 hours every day. Before I go to bed, I must drink a glass of life water, and then I look in the mirror to admire my beautiful face. Whenever I go to bed, I can fall asleep after lying down for about 2 hours. I sleep until 11 in the morning, and my fatigue and stress will never be completely eliminated. The doctor said that I may die at any time, and it's a blessing to live to 30 years old. I'm very happy to hear this because I'm already 30 years old. Finally, I'm generally reluctant to pay with cash, so I will propose to help the doctor kill someone to offset the cost. This is the virtue of a professional assassin. But the doctor usually can't say who he wants to kill, so I kill the doctor to help them reach heaven as soon as possible. I'm really a good person. Thinking of this, Kaiser couldn't help but shake the red wine glass in his hand. The life water, 96 degrees Celsius, in the glass exuded a strong alcohol smell, and its lethality was comparable to industrial alcohol. Logically speaking, he shouldn't drink at work, especially as a top professional assassin like Kaiser. Gulp. However, as he looked at the map on the tablet with a small red dot constantly moving, he happily drank a mouthful of the pure water of life. When the alcohol slid down his throat, the burning sensation stimulated Kaiser's nerves and made him more energetic to devote himself to the great assassination career. After killing the target, I'll have to celebrate. Is it because the guy drives so slowly because the target is sleeping? But it's almost there. Looking at the red on the map slowly driving toward the street here, Kaiser also put his hand on the steering wheel of the construction truck. Tonight's mission for Kaiser was just a very common one among the countless missions he had performed in the past. The mission target's route home was basically fixed. As long as he waited at the intersection, there was a high probability of hitting the target from the side. Although using a prop like the construction truck was against Kaiser's assassination aesthetics. But he didn't have any assassination aesthetics to speak of, so it didn't matter. Rumble. Rumble. Not long after, Kaiser heard the clear sound of a vehicle in the dark night, and he quickly focused his mind. Is he here? It didn't seem to be the case. The location of the vehicle shown on the tablet map was still half a street away, so the sound he heard now should be the sound of a passing car. Although it was already late at night, this was the downtown area of Tokyo after all. It was inevitable that some vehicles would pass by. Therefore, Kaiser didn't pay much attention to the rumbling behind him. By the time he reacted, it was already a little too late. Yeah. Go to hell, trash. Boom. Accompanied by the particularly terrifying and intense collision sound at night, Mr. Crow, who was driving the road roller at the back, stepped on the accelerator frantically and slammed into the back of the construction vehicle. The huge wheels in front of the huge road roller crushed the rear half of the construction vehicle and pushed the front half of the vehicle towards the wall at the other end of the street. But fortunately, Kaiser was also a professional. So at the last moment when the vehicle was about to be crushed together with him, he slammed open the window glass, jumped out with a red wine glass, and did a flat version of the leap of faith. But even so, the huge impact and flying parts still blew Kaiser's body more than 10 meters away, and he was injured all over. What the hell happened to me? When Kaiser woke up after a series of flying and bumps, he only felt that his body was falling apart. There was a buzzing sound in his ears, the things in front of him were shaking, and his nose was full of the smell of gasoline. After being in a daze for a few seconds in this situation, Kaiser's eyes gradually became clear. First of all, what he could see was the messy fences on the street, and his construction truck that had lost its shape. Behind the construction truck was a huge road roller. The man in the driver's seat looked a bit dizzy, but because of the complete protective measures, it didn't seem to be a big deal. Is there a mistake? Am I dreaming? Seeing this strange scene, Kaiser couldn't believe his eyes. The executor killer, Georgy Mihailovich Kaiser, was hit from behind by a road roller in the middle of the night when I was driving a construction truck. If this report was written and sent to the boss, he would definitely think that Kaiser drank the water of life until he became stupid. How could there be such a ridiculous thing? Hey, don't say, there really is such a thing, and something even more ridiculous is yet to come. You're still alive, you're lucky. Before Kaiser could react, a voice full of ridicule floated into his ears from behind. Behind? Wait. There's someone behind me? How did he? Although he didn't know when the enemy had circled around to the back, Kaiser made a prompt decision and pounced forward. He quickly opened up a distance. Logically speaking, this prompt decision was enough to deal with most attacks. Unfortunately, the opponent seemed to have already prepared for this. Whoosh! Whoosh! The moment Kaiser rushed forward, accompanied by the sound of wind breaking, he felt a chill on his thigh, followed by a bone-piercing pain. Ugh! This is... Under the dim moonlight, Kaiser, who struggled to get up from the ground, looked down and realized that a military knife with a serrated edge had pierced deeply into his thigh. This military knife pierced so deeply that it directly pierced through the front of his thigh and came out from the back. Coupled with the unique serrated structure, it felt like a huge poisonous thorn was stuck in the area of the knife, and he couldn't pull it out. What made Kaiser's heart go cold was that the young man who just threw the military knife and completely deprived him of his ability to move, was now aiming a pistol at him. It's over. It's all over. His body was severely injured in the car accident, and his thigh was destroyed by a knife. The current Kaiser had no way of dealing with a pistol. Therefore, he could only bitterly smile and said to the young man, "You win, but before you kill me, can you let me know?" Originally, Kaiser wanted to say, "Can you let me know how I fell?" At least he would die with an understanding of the situation. "Okay, no problem." Halfway through the sentence, the young man with the gun, Ryuto, smiled and replied while putting down the gun in his hand. "No way. This guy is really that easy to talk to? If this is the case, I can." But just as Kaiser's face showed a hopeful expression, A baseball bat smashed into the back of his head from behind, knocking him to the ground on the spot. "Don't worry, Trash, before I kill you, I will not only let you know how you fell, but I will also make you regret being born." After putting away the gun in his hand, Ryuto snorted at Kaiser on the ground. He looked at him as if he was looking at a pile of unrecyclable garbage. Chapter 115. Wait. Narukai, you hit him so hard, don't tell me you killed him? Seeing Kaiser fall to the ground with blood flowing out from the back of his head like a fountain, Ryuto couldn't help but show a puzzled expression to the subordinate who hit him. In fact, when Kaiser's car was smashed, Ryuto also raised his gun and aimed at him. Another member of the Rulon group also quietly came over, and that was Narukai Otani, who parked the car not far away. While Kaiser's attention was focused on Ryuto, Narukai picked up the bat and gave him a righteous sneak attack, knocking down the assassin on the spot. After knocking out Kaiser, Narukai said confidently, "Don't worry, boss, I know my limits. He probably won't die. At most, he will become a vegetable. You're probably, and, at most, really make me feel very gratified. Next time, please use your brain, idiot. If he becomes a vegetable, I will send you to take care of him for a lifetime." Huh? No way. Yes, so help him stop the bleeding now, otherwise, it will be your job to take care of this grandson every day. Hearing his boss's words, Ming Hai hurriedly helped Kai Zhua, who had fainted on the ground, up. He hurriedly took out a band-aid from his pocket and placed it on the wound on the back of Kai Zhua's head. Are you kidding me? What can a band-aid do? Or maybe he was afraid that Narukai's treatment of the wound would make it worse. Ryuto quickly helped carry Kaiser into the car and instructed Narukai to drive to the secret doctor of Kamadachi. Although it was late at night, the car accident caused here not long ago had attracted the surrounding residents, and some even called the police. However, there was no need for Ryuto to worry about this kind of thing. As the pilot, Kawaki Nan would take care of it. At most, he would be imprisoned for a few months. It wasn't like he hadn't been imprisoned before. Speaking of which, Mr. Crow actually liked prison. The inmates there had nice words and big buttocks. Every time Mr. Crow went in, it was like going home. If he brought his brother and manhood along, it would be even more fun. But no matter what, Kaiser, the assassin who came to assassinate Ryuto tonight, had been successfully arrested. It would be much easier to investigate the employer behind him. On the way to the secret doctor, Ryuto took a picture of Kaiser's corpse and sent it to Sensible's phone. That way, he would be able to help Sensible find out more about this guy's identity and employer. Not long after, the car returned to Kamishitochi and drove towards a dilapidated alley where no one usually came and went. For the members of Kyoto who were often injured, on the one hand, they did not dare to go to a regular hospital for treatment. On the other hand, there was a need for treatment, so the industry of secret doctor was born. But don't think that the name secret doctor sounded bad *s. In fact, to put it bluntly, they were just a group of unlicensed doctors. Some of them didn't even know whether they studied medicine or not. For example, the secret doctor who often treated Narukai at this time was actually selling pork. That's right, when Ryuto saw Narukai carrying the half-dead Kaiser into this pork shop on the road to the underworld, he was stunned. The most shocking thing was that the person who came out to greet them was a shirtless man wearing an apron and rain boots that the owner of the pork stall often wore. His body was stained with blood, but he wore a mask and rubber gloves as if it was natural. Boss, don't think that this place is trash, but Dr. Wu Zheng's skill is quite good. He has saved hundreds of brothers. When he followed the unlicensed doctor to carry Kaiser into the pork shop, Narukai proudly turned his head and introduced him to Ryuto. What about the brothers that were not saved? It seems to be about the same number, but among the secret doctors, he is the one with the highest success rate, more than 50%. If something happens to me in the future, and you dare to bring me here, I won't let you go even if I die. Looking around at the pig blood, pig meat, and pig offal everywhere, and the smell of pig stench wafted in the air, Ryuto couldn't help but feel a little nauseous. But Narukai didn't lie. Although Dr. Wu Zhang looked more like he was cutting pork than human flesh, he quickly stopped Kaiser's bleeding. After checking that there were no major problems, he picked up the bottle of sleeping pills. Speaking of which, should I take 2 or 5 pills? Forget it, whatever. Under Long Dou's dumbfounded gaze, Dr. Wu Zhang casually poured out a few sleeping pills and stuffed them into Kai Zhua's mouth. Then, he found a few ropes and tied Kai Zhua to the emergency table with a tortoiseshell. Then, he held a cigarette in his mouth and walked to the side to watch the movie. For a moment, the small room was filled with demons. The smell of smoke and pig stench flew together. In between, there was also the smell of disinfectant and alcohol. It was really unforgettable. When Ryuto and Narukai left with Kaiser, who was tied up tightly by the tortoiseshell and overdosed, and paid Dr. Wu Zhang a large sum of money, it was already 2 o'clock in the morning. Because there was still no news from Sensible, Ryuto went home to rest. At the same time, he asked Narukai to watch over the killer and not give him a chance to escape. Just like that, Long Do finally laid down on the soft bed, and the magnificent night finally came to an end. From last night to this morning, Long Do felt like a century had passed. During this time, he encountered some good things, such as Senior Sister Yun Yen, Senior Sister Yun Yen, Senior Sister Yun Yen, and so on. Perhaps because he was too tired, Ryuto almost fell asleep as soon as he touched the pillow. In the dream, he saw Yun Yen lying next to him in a very cool nightgown. At the same time, she turned sideways and smiled at him. Yunen. I beep beep beep, beep beep beep, beep beep beep. Just as Ryuto instinctively wanted to hug her, his cell phone rang at an inappropriate time. Ryuto picked up the phone with a face of resentment. The time shown on it was 7:05. The person who called was Sensible Goro. Hello. Did you find any clues? Because his intimacy with Yun Yen was disturbed, Ryuto's tone was obviously a little upset. However, Sensible on the other side of the phone obviously didn't have time to care about this. He said in an anxious tone, "Not good, boss, something big happened this time." Sensible was usually a very calm person. Since he thought it was something big, then the trouble this time was definitely not small. So Ryuto also woke up and asked seriously, "What's the matter?" "It's not convenient to talk about it on the phone. Come to the company quickly. Let's meet here." The company Sensible said was naturally the Rulong Security Company, that was now in operation and had received the first business. Sensible personally arranged many security devices there, and there were special personnel patrolling day and night. It could be said to be a quite safe place to talk. Chapter 116. After a period of construction and renovation, Zhang Xian's house had been built and renovated. Today's Rulong Security Company was no longer the same as the previous BlackBerry Finance. With the help of the first startup fund contributed by Gao Yuan, he had booked the entire floor of the office building and planned it in an orderly manner. What rooms should be done, what should be done, and who should be done. All the work was in order and quite orderly. Therefore, when Ryuto stepped into the floor where the Rulong Security Company was located, the Rulong Group member in a black suit, sunglasses, and crew cut stood at the door to welcome and guard the guest. He immediately bowed to him. According to Gao Yuan, there were more than 100 security guards in the Rulong Security Company, and most of them were still receiving professional training from professional instructors in the suburban base. However, judging from the way these security guards were all wearing black suits and sunglasses, it would probably be difficult for the instructor to recognize them. After a while, Ryuto saw Sensible in the manager's office. At this time, he had big dark circles under his eyes, and he was looking down at the information in his hand. Originally, Ryuto was a little annoyed that Sensible interrupted his intimacy with Yun Yen, but when he saw his dark circles, he knew that Sensible probably stayed up all night. He was admirable. "How is it, are you okay?" Ryuto handed over the instant coffee he bought downstairs and said to Sensible, who was sitting behind the desk. "Not so good." Sensible shook his head and smiled bitterly, "But compared to this incident, my situation can't be better." "Is it that scary? Who is that guy named Kaiser?" Well, to put it simply, he is a member of an organization called Executor. When the word Executor was mentioned, Sensible's body seemed to tremble slightly, and Ryuto also noticed this small detail. Executor. Although Ryuto had never heard of the organization Sensible mentioned, it was not difficult to guess what kind of guys they were from the name. Organization, the so-called Professional Assassin Group. Yes, but it's not an ordinary professional assassin group, but a group of very famous monsters in the industry. I have fought with them several times, and I almost died in their hands. What? When he heard Sensible's words, Ryuto couldn't help but frown. Sensible's profession was a network detective, and he often dealt with various cases that couldn't be handled through normal means. Therefore, it was natural that he would have entanglement with the Executor. But according to Ryuto's knowledge, Sensible never exposed his true identity. How did the Executors almost kill him? Could it be that he could follow the cable to beat him up? Sigh, not to mention, it's possible. A year ago, I was investigating a murder case by the Executor, and when I was about to catch their tail, I was suddenly tracked on the internet, and they almost found my address. Although a year had passed, Sensible still felt a chill down his spine when he thought of the accident that almost took his life. With the means of the executioner, if they really found Wise's address, it would be a disaster. Sensible would be finished even if he lived in the Metropolitan Police Department every day. After all, the group of assassins even successfully assassinated a country's president. The Metropolitan Police Department was not much more complicated than a walk in the garden. In addition to the glorious deeds of assassinating the president, this group of people also had countless, successful cases in the past. It could be said that they had a lot of achievements and good service. According to my investigation, there are a total of 5 core members of the Executor. The guy you met named Kaiser is the codename Number 5. So that's how it is. He has some skills. When thinking of Kaiser, Ryuto remembered the sudden assassination last night. If he didn't have the resurrection backtracking system, then Kaiser's assassination would have been 100% successful. And the most important thing was that such a powerful professional assassin was only the number 5 in the organization, and there were 4 stronger monsters in front of him. From the employer's point of view, the Executor was indeed an expert in the assassination world and was very trustworthy. However, although he figured out the identity of Kaiser, there was still a problem that Ryuto urgently needed to know. That was, he needed to know which bastard had hired the Executor to cause trouble for him. About Kaiser's employer, I have a rough idea. In short, you should take a look at this video. Having said that, Sensible turned the computer screen on the desktop and played the surveillance video that made him want to vomit. This is the internal surveillance video of the Tokyo Empire Hotel at noon yesterday. I stole it from their database. The Tokyo Empire Hotel was a well-known 5-star hotel in the Tokyo area. The protective facilities inside were naturally extremely strict, but in the eyes of Sensible, it was like a toilet in his house that he could enter whenever he wanted. In the video, a very quaint old car was parked in the underground parking lot as if no one was around, and a well-dressed middle-aged gentleman walked down from the car. This guy is Kaiser. Although the appearance was no longer the same, because he had seen Kaiser with his own eyes, Ryuto could tell from his figure and walking posture that this was the number 5 assassin of the Executor. Kaiser came to this hotel at noon yesterday, but not to check in, because he walked directly to the executive VIP room on the top floor. Because it was impossible for there to be any surveillance cameras in the executive VIP lounge, Mingji couldn't see who was contacting him and what they were talking about inside. However, as Sensible moved the time of this video forward, the first person who walked into this VIP room was clear at a glance. It was 2 men, one old and one young. The old one looked about 50 years old. He looked decent, but his eyes were full of cunning and insidious. Obviously, he wasn't a good person. The young man next to him was somewhat similar to him in appearance. Although he looked only in his early 20s, his face was pale. He was even a little breathless after walking a few steps. He seemed to be a prodigal son who was hollowed out by wine and women. These 2 guys are... it's them. After seeing the 2 bastards, Ryuto's eyes changed quickly, and he couldn't help but take a deep breath. After noticing the change in Ryuto, Sensible smiled bitterly. I don't think I need to introduce them to you, right? You should know them. Of course I know them. Komashiro Yoshiyuki and Kanzaki Filial Piety. It's these two bastards. Then I probably know what's going on. When mentioning these two names that had been spurned by players for a long time in Red Album 2, No Survivors, Ryuto raised the corner of his mouth, and his tone was full of murderous intent. Chapter 117. The Kamiyoshi clan was a traditional Shinto family. Their activities for generations were centered around the succession of the Seijo. Therefore, every generation of the clan had to leave behind multiple heirs to ensure that there were enough females to inherit the throne. This was to avoid the awkward situation of having no heirs. And in the generation above Colored Glaze, other than her mother Konoshiro Ruehue and her aunt Konoshiro Jingyan, there was also an uncle. That uncle was the man in the video named Komashiro Yoshiyuki. How to describe Komashiro Yoshiyuki? He couldn't do anything, but he was very good at using his family's name to cause trouble. To put it simply, he was a parasite and a sh*t stirrer. He was designed to be scolded. Seiji used the name of the Kanzaki family to hang out with a bunch of nobles and officials. He ate, took, and pocketed. On the surface, he pretended to be a good and righteous person, but behind his back, he had done all sorts of dirty things. However, the most amazing thing about Yoshiyuki was that he gave birth to a son named Filial Piety. Filial Piety wasn't as cunning as his father. This guy liked beauties, especially beauties that he couldn't control. For example, Tenmu Ayam. In the game, from the first time he saw Ayam, Filial Piety was attracted by her beauty and charm. He became a chess piece arranged by Ayam in the Tenmu group. Even in the later stages of the game, not only did Filial Piety give his father Yoshiyuki and a bunch of Kamiyoshi's secrets to Ayam-sama, but he also saw his father being eaten alive by a bunch of wolves and dogs. He became a filial son in the modern world. Of course, Yoshiyuki was also very loyal. Before this, he had already sold Kamiyoshi's confidential documents to another company. This betrayal directly turned all the confidential documents that Filial Piety sent out into a pile of waste paper. This caused the angry Ayam to throw the filial son and the waste paper into the incinerator and burn them clean. Yoshiyuki was unrighteous, Filial Piety was unfilial, the father screwed the son screwed the father. This was probably the life of this brainless father and son. However, what Ryuto didn't expect was that this brainless father and son would appear so early. Moreover, it seemed like they were the ones who caused him to be assassinated by the executors. Holy *T, it was you two planting people who found people to deal with me. Wata Kamiyoshi. Thinking of this, Ryuto couldn't help but gritted his teeth. On the surface, Ryuto and Kamiyoshi didn't seem to have a deep hatred, but in fact, it wasn't that there wasn't. After all, Ryuto had been publicly pursuing Colored Glaze before. He was even warned by Kamiyoshi, but he still did what he wanted. Especially recently, not only did Ryuto kidnap Colored Glaze, but he also caused a big disturbance at the school gate with Colored Glaze, Yunyen, and Dunya. Although the kidnapping case had been suppressed by Colored Glaze as much as possible, some kind of news probably reached the ears of Kamiyoshi's higher-ups, so they decided to deal with Ryuto. After all, the only female of suitable age in Kamiyoshi was Colored Glaze. This young lady couldn't be bullied no matter what. Otherwise, the inheritance of the vegetarian king would be broken, and the consequences would be unimaginable. But even so, since the other party came to Ryuto, he didn't need to be polite with the father and son. He still had to get back some face. Sensible. Give me a copy of this video. I want to take it with me. I already expected you to say this. It's in this tablet. As soon as Ryuto's voice fell, Sensible had already quickly taken out a tablet from the table and handed it over. So consider it. If only you were a woman, you would definitely become one of the most popular female leads. *CK off. I have to catch up on my sleep. I didn't sleep well last night because of you. After leaving behind a sentence that could easily be misunderstood, Sensible laid down his chair and made a decision to skip today's class. Why does this guy sound so arrogant? Forget it. Next, I'll go find Colored Glaze to inquire about it. After leaving the office with a tablet containing the evidence, Ryuto's mind suddenly appeared that graceful figure. This incident unexpectedly had nothing to do with the Heavenly Eye group. Instead, it involved a pair of trash father and son in Komiyoshi. But no matter how trash the unfilial father and son were, they were still Komiyoshi's people. Ryuto had to figure out Colored Glaze's attitude. Although in the original work, Colored Glaze didn't seem to have a good attitude towards the unfilial and unfilial. It felt like she was looking at them as trash, or rather, she didn't even look at them. She shouldn't have any opinions about Ryuto wanting to deal with them, right? However, just as Ryuto got into the car driven by another driver and was about to drive to the school, an unexpected message was sent to his phone. The sender's name was First Wife. He didn't need to look to know who sent it. However, compared to senior sister Yun Yen, who often sent messages, Luli didn't send that many messages. Most of the time, Long Do took the initiative to send her messages. See you at lunch. I have something to tell you. What is this? Riddler? This is... After seeing Colored Glaze's message, Ryuto couldn't help but sigh. In fact, he didn't need to wait until noon to know what Colored Glaze wanted to say. It should be that Colored Glaze somehow knew that someone in Komiyoshi was preparing to deal with Ryuto, so she wanted to warn him in advance. It was a pity that Luli's hint came too late. This person had already died once before you told me that someone was playing tricks behind the scenes. Why didn't you wait for me to turn into ashes and burn this hint to me at my grave? But no matter what, although Colored Glaze knew a little late, she immediately told Ryuto after knowing this, which meant that Colored Glaze still had him in her heart. Even if it was her own family that wanted to deal with Ryuto, Colored Glaze still stood by Ryuto's side. After all, for Colored Glaze, Ryuto was her only partner, the only partner that could help her escape. So during lunch break, in the familiar school garden, Colored Glaze sat quietly on a blanket while drinking tea sternly, waiting for Ryuto's arrival. Not long after, Ryuto yawned and arrived, sitting across from Colored Glaze. After sitting down, he reached for his chopsticks, skillfully opened the lunchbox and put a big mouthful of food into his mouth, then smiled and said, "Miss, actually, if you want a date, it doesn't have to be at noon, I can also go find you in the morning." Date? Who wants to go on a date with you? After hearing Ryuto's words, Colored Glaze's forehead couldn't help but reveal two black lines. Then may I ask, if a young girl asks a young man who is interested in her for lunch at noon, if this isn't a date, then what is? An affair? Seeing that Ryuto's words were getting more and more out of hand, Colored Glaze couldn't help but say angrily, "You glib tongue. Do you know what's going to happen soon? I know, someone in your family wants to deal with me, and then?" In front of Colored Glaze, Ryuto picked up a fried shrimp and threw it into his mouth. After chewing a few times, he felt that the taste was bland, so he took out his own chili sauce and poured it over it. But at this time, Colored Glaze's expression became more and more serious, as if she suddenly understood the meaning behind Ryuto's words. Chapter 118. After all, from Ryuto's words, it wasn't difficult for Colored Glaze to deduce that Komiyoshi's people had already come looking for trouble with him. "What happened yesterday? Are you all right?" "I can eat and sleep, but I'm short on money. I also have an unlucky assassin on my hands, and I'm having a headache about who to hand over to." Saying this, Ryuto smiled and winked at Colored Glaze, clearly hinting at something. Assassin. Even assassins had to be used? Hearing this word, Luli couldn't help but grit her teeth. Her originally cold face became even colder, as if it was covered in frost, chilling her to the bone. After that, Ryuto took out the tablet that Sensible had given him and played the surveillance video for Colored Glaze to see. Seeing the Kanzaki father and son walking towards the executive VIP lounge, followed by Kaiser disguised as an assassin, Colored Glaze's face darkened. But she still immediately asked, "What's the assassin's background? Is he still alive?" He's a well-known assassin who says he's an executor. He's still alive, but... Take me there immediately, I want to see him. Before Ryuto could finish speaking, Colored Glaze suddenly stood up and walked towards the school gate without looking back. Oh ho ho ho, it seems that the young mistress is really angry. When he felt the anger emanating from Colored Glaze's body, even Ryuto was shocked by her. Usually, Colored Glaze gave people the feeling that she wouldn't bat an eyelid even if Mount Tai collapsed in front of her. Therefore, when she really showed her anger, it was no longer a joke. Bastards! That useless father and son actually dared to do such a thing. Seeing Colored Glaze walk faster and faster in anger, Ryuto and Dancing Costume hurriedly followed behind. When they arrived in front of the school gate, the guard sitting in the guard room saw Natsuya walking straight towards them, so he hurriedly walked out and asked, Kanzaki-san, you're... Open the door, I want to go out. Yes. After being swept by Colored Glaze's sharp gaze, the guard couldn't help but shudder. He hurriedly ran back to the guardroom and pressed the button to open the school gate. Logically speaking, Dori No. 1 High School didn't allow students to leave during lunch break. However, it was evident that the guards didn't dare to stop the Kanzaki Scion in her current state. However, it wasn't that the guards were incompetent. It was just that the Colored Glaze gave off a terrifying vibe. It was as if she could pull out a hatchet and chop people into pieces at any time. Seeing this scene, the girl in Dancing Costume couldn't help but ask Ryuto, What did you just say to Miss? You made her so angry. Nothing much, just a small matter. Yep, a small family matter. As if he was frightened by Colored Glaze, Ryuto felt a little scared when he spoke. After all, before this, he never thought that Natsuya would be so angry that it felt like she was going to kill someone. After being taken to Kamiyoshi's car, Dancing Costume drove them to the Rulon Group headquarters. Although Colored Glaze and Ryuto were sitting very close to each other in the back seat, the atmosphere was freezing cold. In order to alleviate this atmosphere, Ryuto forced a smile and said to Colored Glaze, Cough cough, actually, you don't have to be so angry. If anyone is angry, it should be me, right? After all, I'm the one who was assassinated. What are you saying? It would have been better if Ryuto didn't say it. Once he said it, Colored Glaze's almond-shaped eyes widened and she said angrily, You're my man. What's the difference between killing my man and slapping my face? Cough cough. Seeming to realize that what she said was not right, Colored Glaze paused midway and continued, You're my most important partner, so your life and death is related to my vital interests. Killing you is harming my interests, do you understand? Oh, don't tell me she said what was on her mind? Seeing Colored Glaze turn her head with an angry and annoyed look, Ryuto secretly smiled and looked at Dancing Costume who was glaring at him through the rear-view mirror. You're sitting too close. Stay away from Miss. At this time, Dancing Costume warned Ryuto with a look in the rear-view mirror. After all, the distance between Ryuto and Colored Glaze was almost knee to knee. Kamiyoshi's car was very spacious, but the two of them had to sit so close to each other, which made Dancing Costume feel very anxious. After feeling Dancing Costume's anger, Ryuto tactfully nodded. Then, he squeezed towards Lioli, intentionally or unintentionally. He pressed his leg against her slender calf, which was wearing black pantyhose. Because Colored Glaze's mind was on this important matter, she actually ignored Ryuto who was getting closer and closer. Oh. So that's how it is, Colored Glaze is like when she's deep in thought, she doesn't even react when I touch her. Not bad, tights actually have this kind of feeling, silky and soft, what a great invention. When Long Do realized this, he revealed a delighted smile, and at the same time, Wu Yi was almost angered to death. Good fellow, he actually dared to take advantage of eldest Miss? Seeing Ryuto and Miss sitting shoulder to shoulder and leg to leg, Dancing Costume's eyes almost popped out of their sockets. But fortunately, the distance from Dori First High to Rulon Group HQ was only a short distance, so Dancing Costume didn't have to suffer for too long. After arriving at their destination, the two of them followed Ryuto to a basement. This basement was specially used by Rulon Group to hold hostages. Kaiser, who was captured early in the morning, was naturally detained here. And the one responsible for looking after Kaiser was naturally Ryuto's right-hand man, the man who died last night, Narukai Otani. At this time, he was sitting on Kaiser's head leisurely with a cigar in his mouth and a magazine called Flower Boar in his hands. That's right, Narukai was sitting on top of Kaiser's head, who was in a tortoiseshell state, reading a magazine. His firm butt was pressing down on Kaiser to the point that he almost couldn't breathe, and there were even signs of him foaming at the mouth. "Yo, second-generation head, you're here." Seeing Ryuto bring colored glaze to the basement, Narukai quickly pressed the cigar on Kaiser's handsome face, stood up, and greeted them. "Woo woo woo woo." Kaiser, who was burned by the cigarette, tried to struggle weakly, but his hands and feet were firmly tied and his weak body didn't allow him to resist. Narukai was a professional when it came to looking after prisoners. He was very good at making people half dead, but not dead on the spot, to prevent the prisoner from escaping. But at this time, Ryuto just waved his hand to let Narukai push him away, and then made an inviting gesture to Colored Glaze. Then, Colored Glaze quickly walked to Kaiser's side and suddenly put her phone in front of him. Colored Glaze's phone showed 3 photos side by side. They were of a young man, an old man, and a middle-aged man. The middle-aged man was her uncle, Komashiro Yoshiyuki. This is not good. Just when he instinctively looked at the photo of his employer, Komashiro Yoshiyuki, the dizzy Kaiser finally realized what stupid thing he had done. The first reaction of humans when they saw a photo was to look at something they had seen before. Kaiser instinctively looked at Yoshiyuki, which confirmed the fact that he had seen this middle-aged man before. If it was only a surveillance video, it couldn't completely prove that the killer and Yoshiyuki had contact. After all, the video could be faked, but it was difficult to fake a person's instinctive reaction. Combined with the previous video and the information obtained by Colored Glaze, this was conclusive evidence. It could be executed. Chapter 119. So in the next second, Colored Glaze took back her phone and sneered, so it was that guy who hired you. Dancing costume, take him, let's go." "Go." "Miss, where do you plan to go?" "Let's go to the Full Body Club where the playboy often stays. I have a score to settle with the father and son." Lowering her head to look at Kaijua, who was tied to the table and tortured to the point that he looked neither like a human nor a ghost, Lu Li's gaze was incomparably cold, as if this guy was already a dead man. For Ryuto, he naturally hadn't heard of the Full Body Club, but in the world of Tokyo's rich, this was a pretty good place to go. As a top private club where Tokyo's rich gathered, the Full Body Club gave people the first impression of its graceful, classical, and grand style. In Ryuto's understanding, such a rich club should be quite debauched, quite dazzling, and full of poor taste nouveau riche gold. However, when Ryuto followed Colored Glaze and Dancing Costume into the club's door, what appeared in front of him was a very tasteful decoration and furnishings. The surrounding wallpaper was dark blue velvet, the window curtains were dark red hand-sewn peacock feathers, and the decorative oval mirrors exuded a classical Victorian flavor. The handmade carpet on the floor was elegant but not cumbersome. Under the faint illumination of the light, it made people's eyes brighten. The surrounding well-dressed receptionists raised the atmosphere of the place to the extreme. The receptionists at the door seemed to recognize Colored Glaze, and hurriedly came over to greet them, but Colored Glaze just asked them to leave, so as not to get in the way. Because the Kamiyoshi clan had several fixed suites in this club. Colored Glaze obviously already knew where her cousin was, so she went straight in that direction. After arriving at the door of the VIP entertainment room with the words, "Between the chrysanthemums," Colored Glaze took a deep breath, raised her slender right leg in black pantyhose and kicked the door. Bang! The thick door made a slight noise. Then, Lioli held her numb little feet and jumped back 2 steps in a sorry state. This was of course the result. After all, with her pitiful LV1 physique, it would be strange if she could kick open such a thick door. So much so that when Long Do saw this funny scene, he couldn't help but burst out laughing. "What are you laughing at? Come here, kick it open for me." After hearing the laughter, Colored Glaze slightly blushed, pointed at the smelly door that hurt her right leg, indicating someone to do something. "Yes, your highness who likes to kick the door." Long Do, on the other hand, pretended to bow to Lu Li. Holding back his laughter, he walked to the thick door and kicked it out with all his might. Boom! With this kick, the thick door of the VIP room flew backwards and fell on the carpet 3 meters away, making a dull thud. Who is it? How dare you behave so atrociously here? Just as Colored Glaze valiantly walked through the door, a very unpleasant roar came from inside. This roar seemed to want to show off its power, but it gave off a feeling of powerlessness. After entering the VIP room, what appeared in front of them was an extremely spacious and luxuriously decorated room. Not only was there a full set of home theater, billiard table, small bar and other common facilities, but there were also some things that Ryuto couldn't recognize mixed in, such as whips, candles, small leather vests and so on. Of course, in addition to these entertainment facilities, the most abundant thing in this room was of course all kinds of beauties. Black, white, yellow, cute, mature and pure, some wearing nurse uniforms, some wearing maid dresses, and some wearing professional attire. In any case, there were at least 10 beauties in this room, and there were all kinds of beauties. And in the middle of these beauties and a table full of fine wine and delicacies, the filial piety Kanzaki that Ryuto had seen in the surveillance video was wearing a flashy white suit and looking at the door with a surprised expression. Filial piety Kanzaki. In terms of blood relations, he was Colored Glaze's cousin, and was also one of the main culprits who had hired people to assassinate Ryuto. Originally, when he realized that the door to his VIP room had been kicked open, this young Master Kanzaki immediately jumped up with a furious expression and was prepared to teach the person who kicked open the door a lesson. But who knew that when he raised his head and looked over, he just happened to see Colored Glaze's familiar yet terrifying face, and he immediately withered like a frosted eggplant. At this time, a few of the women who had been summoned to serve filial piety Kanzaki looked at Colored Glaze and asked, "Annoying, young Master Kanzaki, this woman is…" Scram! But before they could finish, Colored Glaze coldly spat out a single word, and then glanced at the group of women with a fierce and hawk-like gaze. When Colored Glaze's gaze landed on them, the group of women who had been in a state of high spirits immediately trembled, and they didn't care that they hadn't taken their money yet, and quickly ran out of the VIP room as if they were fleeing for their lives, and the last one even closed the door behind her. No. Not good. These guys are here for revenge. When Colored Glaze, Ryuto, and Dancing Costume who was carrying a body bag walked in, filial piety Kanzaki immediately woke up from the small amount of alcohol he had just drunk, and he quickly reached for the phone in his pocket. After all, filial piety Kanzaki and his old man had just arranged for people to assassinate the legendary extreme Dao young master who had an affair with Colored Glaze. But today, this adulterous couple directly came knocking on his door, and even an idiot would know what was going to happen next. But just as filial piety Kanzaki took out his phone and was about to call his old man, a slightly rough hand grabbed his skinny wrist with lightning speed. Crack! With a fierce force from the hand, filial piety Kanzaki's wrist was broken like a popsicle, and it hung down at a strange angle, and a sharp pain immediately surged into his heart. Ugh! Ah! Slap! Don't be so noisy. If you shout, I'll slap you. If you shout again, I'll slap you again. Seeing that filial piety Kanzaki was about to scream in pain, Ryuto quickly slapped him, and he could only roll around on the sofa like a worm. No. Not good. This guy is serious. He wants to kill me. Although filial piety Kanzaki was a member of the Kamiyoshi clan, he was just a hedonistic son of a rich family. When had he ever met such a top-level hoodlum who attacked him without warning? Thus, filial piety Kanzaki hurriedly scrambled to Colored Glaze's side like a frightened chicken, and cried to the cold-faced lady, "Lou. Colored Glaze Kanzaki, we're still family, you won't just watch this outsider beat me up, right?" "Well, of course I won't just watch." Colored Glaze revealed a sinister smile and said to Ryuto, "You've gone too far. How could you slap someone with your hand?" "Exactly. He slapped me until my face was crooked. Cousin Colored Glaze, you have to help me. Won't your palm hurt if you slap it with your hand? Isn't it great to use this thing?" Before filial piety could react, Colored Glaze picked up a wine bottle from the table beside her and smashed it on his face. You're tuning in to the Narrate and Escape YouTube channel. Don't forget to subscribe and join us on this journey to catch the most captivating stories.